Alright, let's have some fun. It's Friday. Congratulations. We made it. It wasn't too bad. See? One day at a time. And speaking of eternity, we are gonna watch the legendary Trey Smith. At least he's legendary to me. He's gonna talk about the pre-flood world, how it looked, and he's gonna go deep. He's a mystic at heart, which I respect. And I love him explaining his ideas, because his ideas are kinda, I don't hear like ideas like these a lot, to be honest, if at all. So I think if you're interested in these kind of topics, like the supernatural, the ultimate reality, right? What is after this life and stuff like that, well, I suggest you stick around, because Trey Smith is going to deliver.
That symbol follows all the way from the beginning in Genesis, all the way through the flood, all the way to Revelation. It's only appropriate that that symbol begin to take its rise again as you lead towards the end. So we're about to take a journey into the pre-flood world, to Revelation.
Let's go.
And we're also about to fall straight off the edge of this thing right here. Atlantis is a prefiguring of the entire pre-flood world. It's not just a city. It could have been that as well. But in Atlantis,
But the ancient Greeks had a concept of city-state. So they referred to this global kingdom as city. You know, just kind of like Rome was.
this is the entirety of the ancient world. You need a Garden of Eden style world for your ancient past. That's what you're really looking at. And what did Atlantis have? Why were its tropical trees and its fruits and all of its animals were weird and exotic and like mixtures of animals and things? And of course you have hundreds, really it's thousands of flood legends all around the globe, and they become the more precise the closer you get to the event. And the Epic of Gilgamesh, as is seen in my hand right there, that puppy, boy, that looks nice, doesn't it? That's a recreation. That puppy definitely covers the pre-flood world right there. Underneath the ground were large pockets of water in the legend of Atlantis, which provided for those amazing Garden of Eden style environments on the surface of the planet. In ancient China, you have the legend of Nua and Fuxi, and they even put a date to it. They believe that the flood occurred in 2952 BC.
In
We're
China.
gonna fall off of the edge of this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh my
We're gonna
God.
drop 150 feet. Going about 100
Dude,
miles
bring the
per hour.
camera over here and take a look at this. This is evil. The pterodactyl.
This is
We're
evil.
gonna take a journey into the pre-flood world. We're gonna be falling straight down. Is this thing safe today? You think so? You sure? Absolutely? Okay. All right. Before we get to ancient bloodlines, these are the three sons of Noah on the screen right here. And by the way, one would literally expect to find massive building projects that bedazzle and amaze us coming right through the lineage of a family like this. This is an actual Sumerian document that I'm holding in my hand. This is from the legend of Enmerkar and the Lord of Arata. Lord of Arata is Noah from the mountains, the Ararat Mountains.
These are secular stones that mention Lord of Arata as Noah because he lived in the mountains of Ararat. Secular stones.
We're going to be talking in this thing about time, space, and matter. Enmerkar, the name Enmerkar, the Kar, the name Enmerkar, from these texts. Well, Kar means mighty hunter. Just like in the book of Genesis, God calls Nimrod the mighty hunter against God.
Well done,
What
Trey.
you're looking at
Well
right here is a
done.
walk through the book of Enoch, all of the pertinent parts of the beginning of history. What it really is it's a tracking of both darkness and light. So using a mixture of the Sumerian text, using a mixture, all the texts they told you not to read, all of the things they told you not to look at, and approving that all those things were real. Parts here, you're looking at Genesis 6 and Enoch 6, which, by the way, both cover the fall of the angels. Isn't that just magical? Or focusing on the Hebrew symbols, the pre-flood Hebrew symbols that go atop that pyramid. It's important for us to realize that all Hebrew symbols have not only a meaning. So the most quoted line in the English, all of literature, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, those three words are these 6 pre-Canaanite, they're really pre-flood symbols. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Hebrew symbols from before the flood. You may find that this matches sort of identically with your 6. Now you really have 7, and he would call this Rome phase 2. But up to leading to the crucifixion on the cross of Jesus Christ following the flood, our written records as well as the archaeological evidence give us 6 ages of empires, starting right there where the first little tower rose. Nimrod would have been a Sumerian Assyrian, right there in the same area where every written record on earth, pretty much every written record on earth that covers the flood, from the Eridu Genesis to the book of Genesis to the legend of Noah and Fushi, tells you that the boat that saved all mankind landed. 6 ages of empires. We have the Assyrians, that would equal the Sumerians, the Assyrians in that package. You have the Egyptians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, and Romans. It was under the Romans that Jesus died following that flood. Well, if I hop back over here to the words in the beginning, or Bereshit, we start with the Hebrew bet, the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And of course, these 6 symbols as well. You start with the bet, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're at the last letter, the 22nd letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The cross, which means sign or mark. Now, in fancy magazines and modern literature, you have the drop cap, like the I on in the beginning. Well, the first place they got that is out of old King James Bibles, like this one right here. And where they got that was in old copies of the Torah from the Hebrews. And where they got that is that's the way they believed that Moses got it, on top of the mountain. Now the first letter, it's commonly said that the book of Genesis, or the entirety of the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation and everything between, is a tale of 2 cities. I'm going to take it a step further than that. What you're looking at is a tale of 2 trees. Now what the rabbis will tell you is that whatever symbol starts a paragraph, a sentence, or a whole page, or the entire book, from Genesis to Revelation and everything between, should give you some indication of what the entire text is going to be about. Well, in the case of that giant emphasized bet that starts the book of Genesis, well, that bet, that's the symbol for home. So everything you're reading from Genesis to Revelation is about home. But stepping from there to our ayin, the ayin is the number 70. Israel, when Joseph's family entered Egypt, they entered a family, and there were 70 of them. They entered a family, and they left a nation. Now, speaking of sets of 6 that end with a cross, just like man was created on the 6th day, I guess that brings us to the Vav, the 6th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Now, what the rabbis will tell you, in any genuine or authentic Torah, ancient Torah, the Vav, each scripture is going to start with a Vav. That's because the rabbis believe this is the only symbol that connects heaven to earth. What they're really stating with that is that man, consciously plugged in, built entirely out of genetic digital coding, the software coding of life itself, and running loose in this place in his biological spacesuit. Man, the Vav, number 6, is the connecting piece between heaven and earth. Okay, I guess we're going on a journey. This is an air balloon, top of the world in the Nile.
Hey guys, here comes the fun part.
Okay.
That is the ground. If you do not like it, suck it up,
This
buttercup,
chair
I don't care.
is about to fall straight down, and here we go.
So this little guy right here, pterodactyl, you actually have reports where you have some of these creatures that, I don't know if they're true or not, but in pockets of the deep jungle, you have reports of sightings of these guys. God spends more time talking about what he did in the lives of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, each one individually, than he does on the entire creation of the world. At the end of the book of Genesis, mankind is in a desert and is about to be starving. And the man they're going to turn to, Joseph, is a man in the bottom of the Pharaoh's cage who is listening to the Creator. For 30, 40 years ago, you even have reports that come out of San Antonio, Texas. The symbol of the iron can either be light on the right hand, or it can be dark on the left hand. And if the eye be darkness, then how great is that darkness? That passage comes from Matthew 6:24. That's a heavy number of authority, by the way. Now at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the cross, there were 3 Vavs. I mean, that's the symbol for the nails. There was one in each hand and one in the feet. 3 Vavs on that cross. The symbol for the iron, the number 70, the pre-flood symbol, iron, represents light on one side in the book of Genesis, the primeval light of God from Genesis 1:3 in the book of Genesis. And the first place we see the iron become dim or going towards darkness, well, that would be in Genesis 3. Notice it's the Vav going back there. I didn't determine it. Genesis 3, where God made garments of skin. And the word skin makes use of the iron in that passage. Now, the Great Pyramid is covered with 144,000 casting stones, so it's believed to be. Now, that's not a throwback to the book of Revelation. I don't know what would be. You have 3 pyramids that would all be in a perfect row. They're shaped like Orion's belt because the one on the left-hand side is askew. Notice that one path goes up, like it's headed towards heaven, and the other path goes down, like it's headed towards hell. Whether that was intentional or not, the symbolism is fascinating. 153 feet, that's exactly how many fish that Jesus brought in. Go look at the mathematical properties of the number 153. The Grand Gallery, of course, has an empty tomb inside of it. Joseph, the prefiguring, these pyramids, we're going to be making the case to you that these pyramids are all a symbol of Joseph. More than that, it's a symbol of God. In fact, the pyramid directly in the center that looks the largest is actually, the appearance of it being larger is actually an illusion. So the Great Pyramid is the one right next to it that's in line with it. The other pyramid, which is smaller, is actually punier, as you look up here at the top, and it's askew, it's out of line, just like the thieves at the cross. The one on the right said, Lord, if you be who they say you are, would you even remember me? Think how weak that is. Would you even remember me in your kingdom? His hands are nailed to a cross. There's nothing he can do, no work he he can do that can save him. He just believed, even a wimpy belief, in Jesus. Jesus did not reply wimpy. He said, assuredly, this day you shall be with me in paradise. The thief on the left, they're both thieves, they don't even get a name. The thief on the left, he's mocking, both were mocking at the start. One changed his heart, the one on the right. The one on the left mocked all the way to his death. Up here at the pyramids, you have two here, and the one that's little bitty and puny, the one that's askew, is that left pyramid. Just like the two thieves on the cross, light and dark. And of course, the top of the pyramid up here is missing its iron, its capstone. Almost as if, symbolically speaking, there's some kind of a war about what eye should peer from atop that ancient structure right there. No one really knows where the capstone went. Now, aside from all that, the reason why that these pyramids are commonly compared to Orion's belt is because that alignment with the askew one at the side matches up with Orion's belt. Whether that's by chance, accidental, or God did it, men knew or didn't know, I find it fascinating. Here's these three. There's Orion's belt. And of course, Orion's belt is part of the constellation, part of the zodiac of the mighty hunter. So those askew stars are part of the askew hunter, which of course brings us to Nimrod, the first eye atop a tower. And I absolutely assure you, your first Nimrod is a foreshadowing of your much larger last Nimrod. Right now we're inside of cliff dwellings leading towards all of these ritual ceremony sites. So we're going to be coming inside of, when we take a tour through the pre-flood world. This is an Indian cliff. What you're in the ancient room of this is an ancient kiva. And inside of these, we're in some mesa cliff dwellings on the edge of the canyons. This is where Indians were. This is specifically where spirits would come out from. Now, part of the way that happens, just like we cover in pre-flood, just like we cover in a lot of this stuff. The back of that looks pretty rocking, doesn't it? It's not just the weird things that you also find around ritual sites in the ancient world. Trust me, we go through that in this book here. And in entities. When you're taking the ayahuasca, the peyote, these different magical plants. That right there is called lamb. That's the first drawing in history of what they call today a gray alien.
You know who did it?
By Aleister Crowley.
There you go.
It was a being that he said looked like trafficked with a Babylonian king. I've got it in the book Nimrod.
Bro.
He said that creature right there would step out of thin air when he summons them. Just
Bro.
like over here, Manly P. Hall said he would summons the Yoda, a wisdom spirit. An amphibious, reptilian-looking spirit, which would magically appear.
That's where
It's
it
only
comes
inside
from.
the magic circle. Are you willing to talk about it?
Yoda.
I know you. Look, just admit. Just admit. We all know the stories you were making up. Can you just say you're sorry? Can you say you're sorry? Okay. See, now that's a friendly thing to do. Well, that will let you make entrance to spirit world. Or people that have sleep paralysis and they believe something's in the room with them. When you take the ayahuasca, then all of a sudden the entities appear. The aliens that come out from another realm. Okay, so can you tell me about it?
It's a Mahagala.
Okay, what does he mean though?
I think he's a god of power.
He's a power god. Is he real? I mean, no, I mean really, in reality.
Yeah. So we worship him.
Okay, can he manifest? There's my friend Mike Hughes touching the top of the pyramid right there. If the eye peering from the top of the pyramid can go on a dollar bill, then certainly a Joseph coin for 2020, made by Mike, by the way. He felt that compelled that this is a Joseph period. What are these on him? This is a third eye?
Yeah, that's the third eye.
Okay, so what does the third eye do? In this video you're watching now, exactly 0 glory gets to go to ugly, wiggly little devils. All glory. So the third eye, he can see through realms and things. So, and he's $3 grand, which give all glory to the Lord God of the universe. It's a Joseph coin right there. For these videos and every video from God in the Nutshell goes to, well, just like it says right on the back of this coin, Yod He Vav He, God himself, the creator of the universe. My Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Everything is covered by the blood of Jesus. Welcome to the Joseph period. And that right up there behind me, that's the pre-flood balancing rock in Colorado. We're talking about the pre-flood world. Can you talk to us about it? Can you share some information about it?
Can you come here?
Joseph himself, and I've often referred to this time period that you're in right now as a Joseph period. That's a time of prosper. You need the time of prosper for the pagans to be able to come in later, take that prosper, use it against God, and go to their tribulation. The eye can either be light or dark. After pre-flood, Nimrod, and when it says turn the cover on the top, that's because it looks like that on the back.
Well, they think we have food. I feel so bad.
You are on part 1 of a 3-part set journey into the pre-flood world. Speaking of the ancient world, these dudes that I have in this little box right here are called triops. And here's one of these guys right here, claimed to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of years old. These are living fossils, is what they are, that are found identical today as they were way back in the ancient world. The same class of things. They are the same things. These are the great-grandbabies of the trilobites. Trilobites, which you have plastered and sandblasted into walls and canyons and in every layer of strata underneath the ground. Like a day of catastrophe of water smashed this planet Earth. Well, these are their great-great-great-great-grandchildren, sold in this box here at Walmart for 10 bucks. These are the smaller, wimpier versions of the trilobites that you find in the walls. Just like everything here is declining, including us and all of the animals. The elephants were mammoths in the ancient world. Everything here is going downhill, including the ancestors of the trilobites, or the great-great-grandchildren of the trilobites. And in that same line of thing, here are horseshoe crabs found in fossils, just like these fossil fish right here are identical today as they are in this rock. These evolutionists used to claim and tell all of us that they were, well, they still do, 300, 500 million years old, strangely immune to evolution, like hundreds and thousands of other things. Evolutionists believe these were extinct hundreds of millions of years ago. To put that in perspective, that's older by hundreds of millions of years than your dinosaurs. Well, until evolutionists visited restaurants in China, where the Chinese were totally unaware they were extinct, and only in the fossil record, as they were serving them in restaurants in China, Malaysia, Thailand. The Emperor of China, by the way, there are records, and there are all sorts of records like this, particularly that come out of China. You have bulks of dinosaur bones that come out of there. Claimed that some of his chariots were pulled by triceratops. It's hard to claim that before triceratops is discovered.
Did you hear that?
Also in this thing, going to be trying to talk about time, space, and matter. I think it's only appropriate, since we're going pre-flood in this, to start with the words from the book of Genesis, the names in that book. You have 10 names from Adam to Noah to the time of the flood, just like you have 10 plagues of Egypt, 10 commandments, 10, the Yod, which is like a thought that dangles between heaven and earth, is a number of completion. It's a universal whole number. These are the 10 names. They begin with Adam. Each name has a direct meaning. You'd have an impossible time convincing me some rabbis concocted this in the Genesis text. Adam, it means man. Seth, appointed, mortal sorrow. Man, appointed mortal sorrow. The blessed God shall come down, teaching. That's Enoch's name. He was the 7th from Adam. When he was not, for God took him. When he left, he had this testimony, that he pleased God. came down teaching. His death, whose death? God's death shall bring the despairing, that's you and I, rest and comfort. By the way, Methuselah, whose name means his death shall bring the judgment. He died the very year, or 7 days, before that flood. But to get into this, to really get in and understand our eyes atop the pyramids, I think it's important that we know a little bit about, since Egypt is a foreshadowing of Revelation, to really look at the Exodus, we've got to understand just a little bit about Egypt, particularly ancient Egypt. This is all pre-flood. In fact, this is your timeline of where we're going right this second in this video. In fact, we're not going to start way back at the pre-flood world in the day that the rocks jetted straight up out of earth. We're going to come forward through Nimrod, forward through the Exodus, and start at the hour of the pyramids with the eye on top, right in this video, beginning now. Of course, we know that our current maps of Egypt were drawn by Berkeley-style university professors because, well, you've got Upper Egypt down here and Lower Egypt at the top, up there. Your current timelines of Egyptian history look a little something like what I have on the screen back here. The first little seedlet of Egypt, right here in the first dynasty, is King Narmer, depicted on what's called the Narmer palette right here.
This is where it gets interesting.
At the Narmer palette,
Very
you have one of the first gods of Egypt, or at least the god that he thought to portray the most prominently. This character here with horns coming off the top of its head. And King Narmer is pretty much, well, like all of the little bitty sprinkles of kingships that began to develop, dropping right down along the fertile land down in here in what would become Egypt, and also over in here in what would become Babylon, from Ur, Uruk, Cush, Babylon, and Nineveh. And of course, the little settlement and warlord of Eridu were the tallest and first ziggurat, the ziggurat of Eridu, often called the biblical Tower of Babel. The ziggurat of Eridu, which is a real and actual place and thing, would in fact have been not only the oldest, well, probably the oldest ziggurat in the world, but also the largest. Seen here on the screen, somehow it was shaken to its very base. But no one would argue that King Narmer of Dynasty 1 was just a little bitty warlord. This goes on from the first dynasty of Egypt under Narmer until something unusual happens in Dynasty 3 under King Djoser. He has a very mysterious visor named Imhotep, the magic man of Egyptian history, who would build the first step pyramid of Egypt. Right down
following?
in here with scaffolding we're walking under, which this guy here really isn't supposed to be taking us through, I guess, or so he claimed. These are the pages that deal with Imhotep and Joseph. These are called cartouches, or the names of the pharaohs. Names of pharaohs are in cartouches. I have been waiting for years to go through all these parts, and I'm giving away some secrets in this pre-flood video here about the Exodus, but don't worry about that. Egypt has plenty of secrets to give. Imhotep, compared right here on this page to Joseph, the things you learn about the cartouches. This is a Joseph coin, and on the back of that coin, the magic man that made the wealth of all Egypt. Well, there's his grain storage facilities right there. And you're in the year 2020. That's Imhotep, i.e. Joseph, on the front of that coin right there. This step pyramid was built by King Djoser of the 3rd dynasty, and his visor, Imhotep, it's an important name, Imhotep, was revered through all of the ages of Egyptian history. In the same general area, just a few miles, in fact, or a few kilometers, in fact, from where the Great Pyramid, or the pyramids of Giza, including the Sphinx, would later be built. More than this, that step pyramid complex in Dynasty 3, built by Imhotep, under King Djoser, would actually be the model for the pyramids that would come. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built by Khufu, which is in the 4th dynasty of Egyptian history. Now, speaking of Egyptian history, all of your current timelines of Egyptian history come from this guy here with the star occultic pagan thing on top of his head called Mentho or Manetho. You say tomato, I say tomato. This man's timelines are not only...
By the way, I believe the last writings of Memento were in what's now Western Republic of Macedonia in a monastery. And this was back in the Renaissance when I think one of the Medicis or something crazy like that paid a dude and went to that monastery and took those. Were handed over. I don't know how he took them, but he got those manuscripts from Memento.
The basis for all current dynasties of Egypt and their timelines.
It's going to get big now.
All of your secular universities, but not only that, they've used the timelines from this guy and his Egyptian history as the underpinning of what you are basing your current world history on. This guy's documents. Manetho, he was a priest of Egypt, actually during the time of the Greeks, who believed in this guy here, the Greek god Pan, with the two little double horns on top of his head. Egypt had been conquered by Alexander the Great and largely become a joke. You're going to find the Kokopelli, who plays the flute, is always by these kivas, these Indian places, always playing his flute. Well, Pan, the god Pan, plays his flute. And the flute comes, not that playing the flute's bad, as the Pied Piper story, where the children are going to follow, but they're going to drown in the water, in the Abzu, the abyss. But they followed the Pied Piper, the magical Pied Piper, and they all listened and didn't think. In fact, Alexander had declared himself as Pharaoh, but nonetheless, the priests of Egypt began under Alexander the Great, while Alexander the Great was putting together all of the historical and religious texts of the entire world. That included Manetho, who gave us the Egyptian timeline upon which we today have based our entire world history timeline. But let's give him a shot. The uppity-ups and the university professors back there drinking their brandy think that Manetho is the most trustworthy guy on the planet Earth. Let's give him a shot. First of all, the name Manetho means the truth of Thoth. With a name like that, we know it's got to be solid. Okay, so let's take a look here at Manetho, or the Truth of Thoth's document, upon which we've based all of current world history from our most Ivy League universities. Well, he stays to us right in the opener, no less. So all of your world history today is based on the writings of the pagan priest Manetho, a priest of Thoth, during the time of the Greeks. Gave you, what the secular guys use at all of your universities for Egyptian history, is based on the writings of Manetho. His document. That's we're going to have a total of 969 years. Let's see, Kronos, the god Kronos, ruled for 401 years. Now, I actually made a mistake in the video that you're watching. We stated that Kronos ruled for 401 years. It's actually 40 years, so I didn't want to upset any Kronos fans. I want to correct that where I'm standing in the kiva. And just to be clear about this, according to the Greeks, Kronos came from Uranus. He says after this that Osiris and Isis ruled for 35 years. Typhoon,
that's a big Kronos.
Typhoon for 29 years. So your world history right now, today, that you're going to learn in any university is based on Egyptian history, or what they claim is Egyptian history, based on the writings of the pagan priest, Manetho, priest of Thoth. Horus, of course, ruled for 20 years, according to his document. And the Oris ruled for, of course, 23 years. This has sounded rock solid to me. Let's look some more. Now, here's the funny thing, is that in Egypt, you always have Upper Egypt, which is at the bottom, and Lower Egypt, which is at the top. So you have two different sets of pharaohs, even of gods and goddesses, going at any given time in Egyptian history, which means that that history is about half as long as the timeline that you see right here. He goes on to state that, well, Anubis, the Egyptian god Anubis, ruled for 17 years. Right after that, Hercules ruled for 15 years. Here he's got Apollo for 25 years, Amon for 30, Tythos for 27, Sosos 32, and of course, right down here at the bottom, he's got big old god Zeus down there for 20 years. Now let me ask you university guys that, because you're a lot smarter than I am. When you're looking at this list, upon which you have based all of Egyptian history and all of world history on top of that, now here's my question, guys. Here's my question. Because you always say
These are bold claims, so listen.
that those timelines
Ooh, I
are just
like this.
unstretchable. They're rock solid. They're in your hand, rock solid. So let me ask you this. Is there a possibility in your mind, because Hercules seemed to me like a pretty strong dude, are you absolutely certain that he only ruled for 15 years? I mean, he's not tougher than Anubis, who it says here ruled for 17? Or let me give you another practical example, guys. I mean, you're all hardcore atheist secular professors that are out there pitching these timelines as absolutely rock solid, nailed to the wall, airtight. So let me pose this for you. Zeus, that's the thunder god that throws the lightning bolts from the sky. Manetto has got him down here for only 20 years. Are you kidding me?
Interesting.
That's all that Zeus gets, according to you fellas?
Something's going on there.
I don't know if I can trust this list. Now, of course, here's the truth, but it's not the truth from thought. Well, what they've actually done is, well, taken what they've liked and left the rest and pushed it aside. The problem is that you can't do that, guys. Because when Manetho is telling you that he believes that Hercules ruled for 15 years, that's equally as real to him as when he's telling you about Ramses II, King Tut, Akhenaten, Thutmose III, Imhotep, the Djoser, Khufu, or Narmer. And more than that, what he's actually copying those documents largely from is the largest pharaoh and most powerful pharaoh and most religious pharaoh that ever lived, breathed, or walked on the face of this earth. The pharaoh that you guys yourselves in Egyptology call the Napoleon of all Egypt.
Interesting.
That's who Manetho largely based his timelines and his chronology and the dynasties of Egypt off of. And more than that, it was that same king, Thutmose III, that is largely, he is responsible. Takes the most credit for the Book of the Dead. In fact, all occult today traces its power back to that man upon which that your lists for your current world timelines are entirely based on. But that brings up an interesting point. Let's take a look at what Manetho was actually writing. Sometimes I think you guys don't actually read some of the stuff, or a lot of the stuff, maybe any of the stuff.
God bless
But
you,
you
Trey.
actually pitch forth. You're too busy back there sucking down your brandy, sitting in your fancy university chairs. Let me read you what Manetho believed about the history of Egypt. If you guys in the major universities get to pick and choose what you like and what you don't like, what you get to keep and what you don't get to keep to put together your timelines of all in world history, then I get to do it too. The only difference between, I guess, me and you, I guess, is that I'm actually going to read to you what your guy actually said. Here we go. Oh, look at this. What a surprise. Starting in verse 6, no less. From the creation of Adam, indeed, down to Enoch. Isn't that something? He brings up Enoch in this. To the general cosmic year 1282, the number of days was known in neither month nor year, but the egregori, or the Watchers. That would come out of the Book of Enoch as well, wouldn't it? Sounds like this guy had a copy. Who had held and conversed with men, the Watchers, the fallen angels or fallen stars, had conversed with men and taught them that the orbits of the two luminaries, being marked with the 12 signs of the zodiac, are composed of, down here, what does it say? 360 parts. Now, let me think. Where have I heard that before? Oh, yeah. In the book of Enoch, in the book of the luminaries. Enoch's calendar has 360 days. with 4 days of remembrance. Those 4 days belong to God. That's why Daniel's prophecy is based on a 360-day year, because the extra 4 days already belong to God. So whether he's going to bless you or curse you, those 4 days belong to him. He's doing it on a 360-day year. But hopping back over to Manetho, oh, you're going to love this. Mesraim, or that would be Mizraim in the Bible from Genesis 10, lived not long after the flood. For after the flood, Shem, he means Ham there, that would be the biblical son of Noah, which
this
he
is all
actually
memento.
specifies in his text, began Egyptus. This is where you get the word Egypt from, or Mizraim, who lived not long after the flood, right here, who was the first to set out to establish himself in Egypt at the time when the tribes began to disperse this way and that. Now, the whole time from Adam to the flood, oh my gosh, this cannot be good for you. These are hardcore atheist university professors that are pitching me as this guy being the inventor of our timelines for Egyptian history, upon which we put our timelines for world history. And he's telling you right here verbatim, from Adam to the flood, according to him, was 2,242 years. Am I missing something here, guys? This is the history that you guys wanted to use for our world. Now, when he says the dispersion this way and that, he means from here at the ziggurat of Eridu, otherwise known in the Bible as the Tower of Babel. Covered here in the Eridu Genesis text, that's what it's called, which covers the event. And goes a step further in the documentation by stating that after the flood, the kingship, this is a God kingship that came down. That's really what Manetho is referring to with Hercules and Zeus and Anubis and all these names.
Same as the Bible. The Bible says the same.
Talking about pre-flood things that came in, just like Enoch was. After the flood, when the kingship from heaven was lowered, the kingship was in Eridu. What are they talking about there? Let me show you. Well, right here on this document, Lord Arata, that stands for Mount Ararat, where the boat that saved all mankind is said to have landed, is having issues with Enmerkar, or the biblical Nimrod in the text. And what he writes is this. This is Enmerkar, who's having trouble getting Lord Arata, who lives up in the mountains, to give offerings to his pagan gods in support of his newly building tower project. And he states this: Enki, the wise and knowing Lord of the earth, this is one of your oldest documents on the planet, shall bring back the speech. The tongues were confused at the Tower of Babel. The word Babel actually means Babel.
Just to bring you up to speed, now he's transferred to the Sumerian tablets that reference all this, how mankind got separated and they earned to be brought back again in one tongue. It's crazy. This is a Sumerian, and before that, memento from Egypt, from late Macedonistic era, after Alexander, the era of the Jadoi or the Diadochi. He lived in, and he also spoke about from reference of the Bible. Crazy.
Shall bring back the speech in their mouths, so that the speech of mankind is truly again one. And who is the Enki? Well, of course, he's this little dude here. And these wavy lines represent a dimensional portal in which he's stepping up into all reality out of, because he's been summoned right at Eridu, where the Tower of Babel was, just like it's clearly and distinctly specified in pretty well all, not just the Bible, pretty well all of your original documents of this planet Earth. So as Manetho continues by telling us, beginning in 12, notice the things that the devil thought is not Yod He Vav He.
Nope.
12. 12 is a number of authority to God. This is the number he uses. The zodiac has an equal number of parts, 360. You got that from Enoch. But he got it filtered through who? And the reigns of the gods who ruled among them for 6 generations in 6 dynasties. He's talking about prior to the flood. Covered, of course, is the Egyptian Nu, or abyss, the boat that saved all mankind, and the long lifespans. covered not just in the biblical text, but right here in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, whose father was the unseen one, ruled for 126 years. Empires right falling down over here, beginning with the Tower of Babel. On this side over here, where you see massive ziggurats beginning to form, and the inception of Babylon. By the way, Gilgamesh claimed that he was part man, part god, and part something else. And of course, the Sumerian kings list places the flood at anywhere between 3000 and 3500 BC. Same kings list that also covers the flood from the Sumerian or Babylonian Assyrian side, putting these kings prior to the flood with enormous lifespans. Now let me ask you something about this particular document. Not dissimilar to the occult of the Egyptian stuff. Does this particular king's list, does it look like it's got a lot of, I mean, that's 3 sets of 6s right there, isn't it? Heading back over to our empires that are the size of modern day super Walmarts. What Manetho is actually copying here comes from the perspective of Nimrod right over here through Cush and up through Ham, who was the son that Noah put the curse on, and that's according to his own words right here when he says Misraim lived not long after the flood, for after the flood Shem, or he means Ham, that's who Nimrod came through, or in Merkar, the son of Noah, begat Egyptus or Misraim, who was the first to set out to establish himself in Egypt. And Manthos is writing you in his document exactly what he's starting with right here, a history of Egypt that comes through Ham, the cursed son, through Nimrod, who built the tower and summons the Enki, and also goes by the name of Nimrod, being depicted right here with the same star being depicted right on the forehead with the third eye, or the Urias, the serpent goes on Manetho's head, whose wife was the infamous goddess with the moon on her head, Semiramis, and Semiramis or Semiramis. Her name in the ancient world is going to be Inanna. In the Sumerian epics, she'll be Inanna in ancient Sumeria. Who Inanna really is, the moon goddess with the moon over her head. Who she really is, it's Utu, it's Ham, the rebellious son of Noah. It's Ham's spoiled granddaughter, his spoiled, whiny, bratty granddaughter. That's why Inanna's name is on all the ancient temples. And Nimrod, her husband, who's also her brother, the wife. She is also the wife of Nimrod. And she's very evil, too. There's Lilith.
Spirit of Lilith and Jezebel.
And her combinations with Inanna and Ishtar and ancient Lilith. Genesis and Enoch 6. And of course, Enoch 69. And that deals with abortion and Planned Parenthood, the modern altars for sacrifice in your modern age, which is almost appropriate to be talking about that in a kiva standing right here. And here are your Machu Picchu temples, where they would cut the heart out and sacrifice you to their god, the dragon waiting on the other side, the Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, the flying serpent, the god of the air, where you find all of these strange skulls, whose child was the part god, part man union called Tammuz, the goat. All of your ancient cultures were looking up at the stars, particularly in Sumerian. That's true, isn't it? He says that's true. Utu in Sumerian is Ham, one of Noah's 3 sons. Utu, or the Shemesh, and this would come from the Sumerian documents. This is actually, Utu is Ham, the 3rd son of Noah, often represented. He was the beginning representation of the sun god in the ancient world. You have Cush, and then you get down a little ways down, you get down to Nimrod. Nimrod, in the Sumerian text, is in Merkar. The Kar, and in Merkar, means mighty hunter. Just like in Genesis, God calls Nimrod the mighty hunter against the Lord. The Akapelu, all of it's in these books. The War of Noah. I bet you even never thought of such a thing. You know that's covered from Nimrod's side. the War of Noah. Nimrod literally covers in those texts that while he's going to war on his great-grandfather Noah, that Noah is up in the mountains, has fortified with thorns, and is releasing ancient dragons on Nimrod and his men. And the dragons are eating Nimrod's men, and Nimrod covers that he's upset about this. We'll be going through that heavily
Crazy.
in Nimrod, both the book and the movie. Did you eat some of Nimrod's men? And then all of these people, including Nimrod, Gilgamesh's father, the exact explanation of who all these people are is covered in these Sumerian documents, which are the oldest documents on your planet. And that's why in these books, I have literally matched up from the Sumerian Kings list over here on this side of the page. I have matched up for you. Let me go over here to this side. I have matched up for you in the Sumerian text what name goes with what biblical name. This is the first time this has been done in history that I'm aware of. I have matched up the Sumerian names with the biblical names, and they're going to fit together like a glove because they're telling the same stories from opposing views. Man, the ancient world, there should be no confusion about the ancient history of our world following the release of these materials. These sections here deal with Gilgamesh and his journey to go see Noah. There's never been any confusion, even with the hardcore atheist secular communities, that's what the Epic of Gilgamesh is discussing, or portions thereof. We're taking that a lot further. I'm breaking down for you. Gilgamesh is telling you exactly where he went to. He's telling you details about Noah. Prior to him, Gilgamesh is a friend of Nimrod's son, Pan, or who would earlier have been called Tammuz, seen here deified on a throne. Inanna, or who is often called Semiramis, she is, oh man, this is an arrogant little gal, of all of the granddaughters of Ham. And there's thousands and thousands and thousands of these basically at this point. Nimrod, who she's married to, this was also the this was the spoiled grandbaby. Spoiled way out there, grandbaby. And when I say grandbaby, I'm talking his other brothers could have been 200 years old by the time that Nimrod was born. So to put this in perspective, and this is an effect that even happens today, where the young baby gets glorified over its brothers and sisters because it's the young baby one, born at the same time that they might even have their own grandchildren. That's who Nimrod was. You're going to go on a journey from darkness, stepping out into the light. Trey Smith. I'm going to set my camera down a second. All of these puppies here, right here in front of you, are available over at GodInANutshell.com. That's a trifecta if I ever saw one. All right. The key is yours, guys. We really don't know how old Nimrod was because neither the Sumerian texts are going to get us convoluted answers, and the book of Genesis follows the descent line that's leading to Jesus Christ. So though it talks about Nimrod, it doesn't focus on his age. What you look at on pages like this with the Genesis timelines, first of all, Noah was 600 years old when the flood came. He lived roughly 350 years afterwards. He died not long after the fights with Nimrod. To put this in just a little better perspective, this right here is a map of the United States from the late 1800s. Just a little before that, you're talking about sparse sprinkles of pilgrims and Indians. Fast forward just a couple hundred years. You are at bustling, towering cities from sea to shining sea and everywhere between. Lit up from space. Each city with millions and millions of residents in just a couple of hundred years. And that's not even with families having 10 and 20 kids apiece, as is what you're reading in those ancient records. Nimrod could have been 200, he could have been 150, he could have been, many of these other kids had their children at the ages of 125, 135 was a common age. And if Nimrod is the beloved grandbaby, he may well be further out than that. What we know for a fact is that when you're dealing with population growth, that happens far more rapidly than people imagine. Starting with those 3 people coming off the ship, by the time of Nimrod, you could have had hundreds and hundreds of thousands, and did. Mathematically, you would have, that were living at that time. Those were the people building your cities. So the Epic of Gilgamesh, and this is a museum quality replica that I'm holding in my hand here, that we were lucky enough to get. By the time of the Epic of Gilgamesh, there would have been, there could have been, by the time of Abraham, which is in that same time frame, your mathematics puts you at roughly 10 million people by that time on the planet Earth. And then who was married to, oh my gosh, this is the ultra spoiled brat of the Ham family. I'm going to talk about why Ham got the curse. And by the way, getting that we're all living under a curse in this place.
Because it's
that comes from the lineage of Adam. So you're not doesn't matter what race, creed, color, anything that you are,
right.
You're living under a curse.
Right, so the Bible doesn't explain why Noah cursed Ham.
All of us need deliverance from the curse. But in the case of Ham, the reason Noah got so mad at Ham is because Ham was a thief, a lying, cheating thief. And that's why he told lies to his own family, which they couldn't run from. Nimrod knew the stigma on his own family. And that's why he was trying, in these texts right here, one of the most arrogant on earth. And Nana is bragging about how they ripped off the garments, how Ham stole the garments of Adam and Eve that were given by God in the garden. In these texts right here, some of the oldest on the planet, she's bragging about that. She wore those garments at her wedding, according to these texts. They can't hide their shame of who they are. Or, hopping over to Egypt, the same trinity is called Osiris, that's Nimrod, Isis, that's Semramses, and Horus. Same 3 figures. So this set of 3 and 3, 3 over here in Babylon and 3 over here in Egypt, they're not quite the same people, but they are the same religious system. Some interesting differences between the two, which we'll unpack in some later videos. But it is sufficient to state this. It is a complete set. That would make another 6, wouldn't it? It's all ancestor worship. Coming right down through the line of Ham, through Kish, through Nimrod, or in Merkur right over here, and the gods of Egypt, the plethora, that are in fact written out right here by Manetho himself, are all fallen angels, devils, and demons, beginning with Sanyaza and Azazel, according to the book of Enoch. Because Nimrod, or in Merkur, coming through the lineage of Ham, has shifted everything. He was controlling the knowledge of mankind. Bottom line, he was worshiping devils. And that's the history that you're reading. And these fallen angels and devils are in fact one and the same as the gods of Egypt. And Alexander the Great had declared himself as Pharaoh of Egypt. And he began funding to gain all of the knowledge of the world. And that would include the writing of the Septuagint for the Hebrews, which means 70, most concise history on earth. But he also funded the Egyptians through Manetho to give you a history of the world. So your secular guys have gone with the pagan, the priest of Thoth, which is funny. It's interesting in itself. Thoth is the god of wisdom to the Egyptians, to write your history of the world. And that history matches tit for tat with the biblical history. Oh, the only difference is this. In the Egyptians' view, all of the fallen angels, the demons, the devils, all of this stuff, all of your witchery is really good guys. In your Hebrew history, demons and things like this are bad guys. And I've got the book for it right here. Look at the back of those, aren't they hot? The Exodus will not only come out as a film this year, so also will Nimrod. And by the way, this entire pre-flood has just gone up for free. We're going crazy sacrifice and skulls all the way. It's charts and graphs and timelines and images beyond imagination. Let's take a walk through here. All of the pages have high definition imagery. You're gonna go through, in the Exodus one, you're gonna go through, there's no Exodus like this. You're gonna go through the Pharaohs, the Pharaoh of the Exodus, Joseph, the Hebrews, all of the evidence for all of these things is in this book. And Nimrod, this is Nimrod like told, it's never been told like this before. This is what the inside of that book looks like. So every page is HD, full high definition imagery. You're gonna walk through the openings of our world. That's what you're gonna do in these books. As you can imagine, we're gonna be going, these are all skulls from early Mesoamerican. Some of them have the head binding done to the skulls. This one has got a complete spinal cord. We're gonna be going strange skulls all the way.
Let's
in
go.
These documentaries.
Let's go.
We're gonna go through all of the ancient gods, all of the ancient gods and goddesses, the importance of those gods and goddesses, the ancient people, the origin. It's a tracking of darkness and light. It's what it is. This whole set is what that is. This is what the soft covers look like. And they're equally as beautiful. They're a touch less expensive. Either one looks absolutely stunning. You're inside cliff walls. You're in an ancient Indian dwelling. And the Exodus is going to come out, and so will Nimrod. And we're going to walk you through the unimaginable of the ancient world, just like you're watching inside of this video over there. Now, you boys in universities, what you're actually fighting against, and everybody knows it with your monkey world stuff, is the Bible. We are about to take a prehistoric journey into the pre-flood world. It's called the Balancing Rock. There's only, and you've got a lot of those that are near mountain ranges, particularly this mountain range, the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, where a rock, see, you need calamity that is spewing earth to get a rock that is set and is balanced like that rock over there. Now, all of these that you're going to see in these cases are clearly monkeys. And I just want to isolate out for you Lucy's skull. I want you to take a look at Lucy's skull right there. Now they'll make Lucy. That's Lucy right there. Now, they'll make little Lucy look like she's humanish. Now, if you can't look at that and tell that that's a monkey skull, even as a layman on the other side of the screen, now that'll pass 9 trillion doctors at National Geographic. They'll put modeling skin on that thing and make it look like a little person standing there. That all of your people, whether light or dark, from your ivory towers, believe different than the common man at the bottom. The common man who gets taught in the public schools, well, that we come from missing links or monkeys. Now, this comes from Charles Darwin. See, part of my problem with this is that if you're paying big dollars, or families are funding large dollars at universities, there's some people who put some cheap modeling clay on something like this, and these are people that claim they know anatomy. All of those names on there, this ought to be the evidence that these people ought to never work in anything like that again. And Darwin was a 22-year-old that lived 150 years ago. Yeah, that's an Ewok-looking thing. They claimed was what a Neanderthal looks like. Neanderthals we know today to be actual human skeletons, unlike everything from the past. It's tougher, thicker, more durable. All the teeth fit, even the wisdom teeth, perfectly. The brain size is much larger than ours today. Bone for bone, like a heavy-duty, no-nonsense built human being. This is a Neanderthal skeleton. This is a modern human skeleton. You can almost look at it, it's a de-evolution. This skeleton right here is bone for bone, tit for tat. It's a heavy-duty human skeleton. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the story of Noah from the book of Yasher, in a way that you haven't probably heard it, as we walk through some of this evidence of the flood. View the modern human skeleton like a little bitty, rinkety-dink, little pickup truck, little bucket pickup truck. The book of Yasher is a text, it's a collection of the Jewish texts that would have been carried with the Hebrews out of Egypt and then collaborated into one piece. The Hebrews bore none of any text on the planet, just like the letters are mesmerizing and contain almost magical properties. And look at the Neanderthal skeleton like a heavy-duty, dually, no-nonsense, fully decked out truck. There's going to be animals coming. Animals know where the storm is. And when you do the math on Noah's Ark, you're going to find that engineers today call the mathematics of that boat, the dimensions of that vessel, the most optimal for exactly the job that that boat would have to do. I had to learn myself what's the difference between a human skeleton skull. This would be a human skull right here. So this one right here on the screen, that's a human skull. What's the difference between that and a monkey skull? This right here, that right there on the screen, right there, that's a monkey. So how do we tell the difference? And that was the time frame during which that he built the boat. Now after the flood, you see structures like the pyramids, all of the ancient temples, not just a few, all of the ancient structures of the ancient world mesmerize and amaze us. Yeah, that would come right through the bloodline of a family just like that. But on the day that the flood came, and by the way, it came 7 days after Methuselah died. His name means his death shall bring, or his death shall bring the judgment. The truth is, your ancient epics, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, or your ancient Sumerian documents, these documents are covering all sorts. They're definitely covering dragons from the ancient world, which they're describing in detail. But more than that, they're describing all sorts of unusual animals. Very similar animals to the things we find in the fossil record underneath the ground. That's why you have to learn on some things to look at them yourself. How do I tell the difference? Monkeys don't have a forehead. This thing right here, see that? No forehead on the monkey. Monkeys don't have foreheads. Now I want you to notice something else about monkeys. This little nose bone that can get broke if somebody punches you in the face, you're like, ah, right? Monkeys do not have a little nose bone. They don't. Which gets us to why a lot of your original Neanderthal skeletons. This is one of many, and this used to really bother me when I would look at some of these early Neanderthal skulls they would find. Eventually they found so many of them that they couldn't cut all the noses off because, you've got honest people in there that are, like, hey, we found it like this. But the early ones, well, they were really pushing this theory. Well, they would all be like that. You'll notice you can go through streams of images with them until they found so many that, you just can't ignore the fact they've all got nose bones. They're taking that off because monkeys don't have nose bones to make it look more monkeyish. No monkey skeleton is like a human skeleton. It's just simply not. Neanderthal skeletons, the early ones, you'd find example after example after example where they would cut this square spot here. That's because everybody knows, well, everybody within an anatomy community knows that, well, that would prove it's a human. So there's always the missing parts. Even with Lucy, they would say, oh no, it's the kneecap and the feet. If we just had the missing parts that we didn't find, then we could prove to you it was obviously those missing parts are the parts we would have needed to show you it was a monkey becoming a human. The reason for the flood is stated in the book of Genesis. That tells you about fallen angels and things like this in Genesis 6. But I would note that God only spends a second or two talking about any of that. It was because the wickedness of man was so great, the wickedness and violence of man was so great in the earth that it repented God at his heart that he had made man. Noah preached them for 120 years. For 120 years. Now, I'm going to play for you some clips of a tape as we go through the evidence sort of the pre-flood and against evolution and these kind of things. During the time period that it was making splashes of news that they were finding soft tissue, then blood, then etc., in dinosaur bones, specifically starting with a T-Rex. Well, you did some, it's really nice that Richard was involved in that kind of stuff. You did some of the I had looked at your stuff and the presentations that you put together arguing against those footprints being young. Those were those were bar none the most stellar presentations on the topic that I can find.
I appreciate that. I put a lot of time and work into it. And like
He's setting him
I've
up.
been for many years working on a full-length book on
He's
the
setting him
subject.
up.
Going very slow. And
These are footprints that were men and dinosaurs, looking like they're running from something together, and then layers of sediments had covered those tracks. Well, a lot of Christians had spent millions of dollars and doctors out there digging and excavating. And they were finding not only streams of tracks, but tracks of dinosaurs and humans that crisscrossed. Then the Dallas Crime Lab came out and verified that these were authentic tracks. Well, this really got the evolution community very concerned. In comes Richard Dawkins. I wanted to talk to you. Yeah, go ahead.
It's interesting. At that time, my own views were kind of still evolving, and even though I had, kind of spearheaded the refutation of the human footprints there, I was not that long out of college and still, refining my own views. And, for a while I was kind of buying into some of the creation stuff, and then soon realized the earth was very old, and then also, before too long, came to fully accept evolution and the rest of it.
Yeah.
When Richard came down, I remember I was still a little undecided about some things, so we had some spirited discussions about all that, and but we were in total agreement about the footprints, because, that was kind of the gist of my work, was refuting what the footprints are. Actually, I took
Refuting the dinosaur human footprints like it was taken awfully seriously. He comes out to America, does a documentary on the footprints, and the guy he uses that had been writing up articles, science articles, against Christians. Then when he goes home, not long afterwards, he even states in there, if even one of those tracks was real, it would be devastating to what we believe, i.e. evolution. Not long afterwards, those tracks were smashed. Well, pretty much everybody in the creation sectors, I asked them, why don't you talk about the footprints anymore? Well, because the big comedy shows, the same ones that would have Richard on, right? They bad-mouthed it too bad to, we don't even talk about it anymore. Well, those tracks had also been smashed. And people like Richard would go out there and say, what idiot would believe a smashed footprint like that was actually a human dino footprint? So the guy that Richard was working with here in the U.S., to badmouth Christians in science article after article after article revolving around those footprints. Well, it turned out he was doing painting. So I made a phone call to him.
I always have time for, interesting projects, so, I'd be interested in hearing more about what you're up to.
Well, and that's a good, I tell you what, it's an honor to be on a phone with a man that interacted with Richard Dawkins and did the most thorough presentations arguing against the footprints. I've got some cash. You laid on me how much it would cost. What I'd like to do is I'd like to get a large painting with like a big demon. And so a big demon.
I didn't get the large painting with what?
Well, it's got a big. Well, hear me out. You're gonna like the rest of the painting. It's got a big. Okay, so it would have. This is only one of the paintings, but it's got a very large demon in the background, and it's got the footprints underneath.
You say a demon, like a devil you're talking about.
Yeah, this would be. But this is funny. I think you're gonna like it. You've got a demon in the background, and then you've got the footprints that are underneath. So those footprints there at Glen Rose, right there in front of the demon, is you, Glenn, holding an iron pipe and bashing the footprints so that no one can see the human footprints with the dinosaur footprint. No, I'll pay you for the painting. Will you do it? I'll pay you well. I'll get you. You tell me how much you need. So this would be a demon in the background, and you viciously coming at the footprints with an iron pipe and smashing them up, and you can be frothing at the mouth or however you want to do it, Glenn. You can even put Richard popping out from the side of you if you want. Do you want to do it? I'll pay you. I'll pay you good for it.
I feel like what's that old comedy record? Who is this really? I don't really.
No. I'll pay. Listen, I'll pay you. I'll pay you very well for it.
Obviously, you run across the rumors about me destroying his friends,
Glenn, I've seen the before and after shots, man. I'm telling you. Listen, Glenn. I've seen your drawings. You do good work. Look, you destroyed the footprints.
I'm still really confused what this is all about.
But no, this is what it's about, man. I told you at the opener of the call. I'm looking for some artwork done, and I could think of nobody better than you to draw the image. You're doing artistry. I'll pay you for it. I'll get you the cash immediately. Draw a picture.
Yeah, I don't really know what it's all about. Anyway, whoever this is, the track that he was talking about is still there. Doesn't even look that different.
Glenn, that's a heck of a slip, my friend, that they don't look all that different. Yes, Glenn, they look very, very different. Here's the before and here's the after. That is an enormous Okay, so difference. Rocks like this one here that are balanced upwards like this. There's no way to get this formation. And if I come inside here, you can see right through to the other side of it. And you can see all the people that are out here taking pictures. But this rock is balanced on top of me. You need a major cataclysmic catastrophe for rock formations like this. And you can even see the sediments of ocean and saltwater all over these ancient stones. The word dinosaur, dinosauria, comes from Sir Richard Owen. It means terrible lizard. And it was just a scientific term for what had previously been called dragon. Sir Richard Owen spent his entire life fighting the theories of Charles Darwin. Today, his word dinosaur is used for the evidence for Darwin's theory. It's a slap in the face to a great man of science. I'll tell you this, man. I love you. I love you dearly.
Your voice sounds familiar, but I can't quite...
Yeah, I know. I get that. You know, Glenn, I get that so much. And those tracks look familiar too. That you were out there with that pipe going to work on them. I'm telling you, Glenn. I'll pay you. Look, man. Look, Glenn. Glenn, listen, you hung out with Richard Dawkins. You used to give the presentations on them. I'm asking you sincerely. Give me a number, Glenn. Tell me how much it costs for you to draw yourself.
Get it, Trey.
Breaking the footprints, breaking the evidence. I think it would be funny for you to draw up a picture of yourself hitting the prints. Well, I want to hang it on my wall. I want a picture. The story is so clear. Noah preached them for 120 years. That's an important number, just like you have 12 months in a year, just like you had 12 disciples of Jesus, just like you had 12 tribes of Israel, 12 sons of Jacob. 120. 12 is the number of authority before God. For 120 years, he preached them, repent, repent. Now, the genetic instructions God gives in the book of Yasher, I find fascinating. But the animals had come and were showing up for literally months around that vessel, as far as the eye could see, with the tightest huddle around that boat where they were beginning to pack them on. And the lioness ran away and stood in place of the lions. And Noah saw this and he wondered greatly. And he rose and he took the two whelps. These are baby lions. He took baby lions. He was taking baby creatures. It tells you that right here in the text. And notice that he's been given instructions on which ones to pick and which ones not to pick. These are called living fossils. All of these things you see here, most of them plants and fish and crickets and cockroaches and things like this, and birds, beavers, everything. Ancient world stuff is either giantly larger, and even if it is giantly larger than the stuff today, it's absolutely identical. So here's a cricket, and you notice he looks identical today as he did in the ancient world, so he didn't evolve. Here you've got a spider. He looks identical today in the fossil record as he does in the ancient world. Over here you've got a plant. Most of your fossil record is plants, sea life, seashells. If you were to look at the strata underneath the ground, most of it is chock full. If you were honest about what's in there, it would be seashells and clams, seashells and clams, seashells and clams, all the way down to the bottom. In Colorado right now, so in fish, that's the mountains, okay? So a lot of fossils. This is about as far from an ocean as you're gonna get. So this that I'm looking at around and the bottom, this is a shark's mouth from the ancient world. This is called a megalodon. You have sharks all over the place. You have fish in every desert. You have whales in deserts. So here's two fish crisscrossing each other. That's going to be a little more expensive. If you have a fish swallowing a fish, right? It's hard to do that. I mean, they didn't lay there for millions of years doing that. Here, of course, is your classic fish eating a fish. That's a nice one right there. Here's another fish going, eating another fish. All these buried in stone. Here's another fish eating a fish. These guys are all over the place. Not good enough for you, fish eating other fish? Well, here's an ancient horse, unevolved by the way, surrounded and buried with fish all around it. Now with the horse, they used to say that an ancient version of the horse, that his neck just grew and grew because he wanted to get to the trees that were up there high, because it's like the little train that thought it could, I guess. You just will it and it happens. Well, that can't happen because, so this is up above me, this is a giraffe's neck and anatomy. It spreads all the way up there to the top. And in that long neck, he's got valves. They go all the way down the neck and the blood vessels. This way when the head goes up and down, right, that the blood doesn't run back and forth so quick. This is a lot different than a horse. You've got valves that go all the way down the neck of this animal. That way when it puts its head down, it won't go unconscious when it lifts its head back up. A horse doesn't have that. And if it didn't, it can't go unconscious every time it goes down for a drink of water. More than that, up here inside of their head, inside the big head of the giraffe, he's got sponge-like material in there that keeps the blood inside the brain. And valves that go all the way down this long pretty neck here. Look how tall he is. Look how tall he is now. So when he goes up and down, he won't go unconscious. So, and you couldn't have evolved that. You need that from the very start. You started with a bunch of stuff, now you've got less stuff. Where was the evolution at? The explosion of life that's happening on this picture, all we know for a fact is that that's not happening today. In fact, everything here declines over time. But you've got tons of stuff that's identical in the past as it is right now today, or it's mammothly larger, no pun intended, like the mammoth is a giant elephant. You had all the things you have now, only many of them were giantly more mammoth in scope. And you have more things then than you have now. So in the past, you had bigger, badder, stronger, tougher things, and more of them, and now you have less of the same things. So you know that in the ancient past, there was some difference between the world today, where things are weaker, smaller, and punier, and the ancient world, where things were bigger, badder, and tougher. Creatures from the ancient world that are Tyrannosaurus Rex or larger in scope. The food sources, trees today that are little bitty trees with trunks the size of my finger you couldn't get your arms around. The shots you're looking at of the mammoth on Branson, Missouri, the mammoth is a giant elephant. All of them are found buried in earth. The mammoths are found standing upright in ice, on just the edges of the ice. If that's what you find on the edges, what do you think you find deep inside the ice? These creatures are found, turn this way, the dinosaurs, in death poses, underneath the ground. Sludge, they were running from something, and their heads are going up, gasping for breath, so much that the head breaks, and they're trapped, gasping in these poses. That pose is so common right there that it has a name for it. The death pose, where the dinosaur is gasping for air. Now, this dinosaur dragon that I'm holding, just like you'll see in the fossil record, and here's the gooey guts for him. All of the gooey guts for him, or for you and I, or for any animal on this planet, these creatures are found in the fossil record fully formed. There are no transitional forms leading to any of these megalithic, these giant, whether they're giant or not, animals from the ancient world. All of your animals show up fully formed in the fossil record. There are no transitional creatures. Are there transitional creatures leading to you? No, he just wants food. I wish we had some food for him. But that animal right there, you can have a lot of types of deer in deer coding, but you don't have turtle shell code in a deer. You don't have whale code in a deer. Do you have any whale code? Were your ancestors whales? No, I think he says no. He would just like some pine noodles. Okay, guys, we're going to take off on you. You can't have something evolving its parts because it needs, just like all of your parts, if your heart were even slightly off, trust me, you would know about it. You need all of the parts working and functioning properly from the very start. Otherwise, the animal, just like I've got its guts out here, it couldn't live without its guts in there, fully formed, fully functional, and ready to go from the very start. If they've got 30-foot-long necks, but you can do the math for the muscles in the neck leading to that giant head. Now, I'm not telling you that the animal couldn't lift it with those muscles, but what I'm telling you is that today he would have enormous trouble doing that. This animal would be at great lengths just to lift its head up, many of them. Look at the size of the bones of this creature. So there is some difference between the world of the past. You need a Garden of Eden style world to facilitate these Garden of Eden style animals, like you see the bones for in every museum as we walk along here. What I have here on the screen, that's Sir Richard Owen, and he's standing next to an ancient moa, which is a giant ancient ostrich. That is an ostrich from today. That behind it is an ancient moa, an ostrich from the ancient world. It's about twice as large. This right here, that is an ancient pre-flood beaver, little bitty beaver. That right there is the modern beaver. It actually is little bitty compared to its ancestor. This right here is an ancient bumblebee from the ancient world, pre-flood world, next to a hummingbird. They're about the same size. This right here is an ancient rhinoceros. I always love getting to do these, the ancient giant animals. What you see here is a bed of bones of, in this case, just a chunk of rock taken out, set here as an exhibit, of, in this case, rhino bones, all buried. Wow. So animals tend to herd. This creature above me is a giant ground sloth. Most of those dinosaurs, particularly the giant ones that would fill buildings that are larger than the one that I'm in, a lot of the stuff they have out there in China, the thing couldn't even breathe today. It could not, the animal could not breathe today. And you find these animals, particularly if they're mammals, because mammals all herd, you find them in graveyards. Your giant ancient sea turtle on the screen right there. This right down here, this little bitty guy, that's a modern bald eagle's head. That right beside it is an ancient bald eagle's head. And that right there, that's an armadillo from the ancient world, almost the size of a modern day VW bug car. This is a modern orangutan, and that behind it is an ancient orangutan. This is our modern camel right there. This is an ancient camel on the screen right there. This you see right here is a modern cow's head, and this you see right here, underneath which stands Louis Leakey, one of the promoters of the claimed missing link, Lucy, staring at this giant goatish cow head right there. The geological column seen right here on the screen, drawn for us by Charles Lyell. This is Charles Lyell on the screen up here. He was an attorney friend of Charles Darwin. He wrote this: Charles's theories delighted me. If pushed as far as they must go, it would prove that men may have come from the orangutan. Charles Lyell. Now, the reason they don't use the orangutan anymore is because, well, we found ancient orangutans. They looked identical to today, only just like right here. There's your modern orangutan. The ancient one was 30 feet tall. Who openly told us that he hated God, that he hated Christians. He wasn't a geologist, he was an attorney. But we still use his charts today for what we call the geological column. Layers of strata, what they are, layers of strata underneath the ground, all the way down to the Precambrian layer, where you get giant earthworms, coincidentally. Layers are not made, strata underneath the ground is not made of moon dust. It's full of billions of things, dead things, all fossilized in there, mainly sea life all the way to the bottom. You got 6 foot tall penguins in deserts. They don't tell you that in your history class. Go look it up. That's where you excavate penguins, is in the hottest, most arid deserts on earth, like the Atacama. It's full of penguins, man. 6 foot tall penguins. And when you look at the Precambrian layer, that's the bottom layer in all of it, they're going to say, oh, look at us, we found giant earthworms. Yeah, that's your original Earth layer. And big surprise, they're giant earthworms. Everything from the ancient world. Human skeletons, the deer skeletons, everything from the birds, the bears, to the beavers, to the elephants being mammoths, and the little bitty lizards being dinosaurs. It's all mammoth in scope. Ancient chimpanzee, modern chimpanzee. Okay, so let's talk carbon dating for a minute. Because if you've got in the ancient past a Garden of Eden style world, is going to require an entirely different or wildly different atmosphere above us, which is going to pump out numbers that are crazy, just like the crazy animals you find under the ground. Crazy answers on any of your dating tests. This is Willard Libby. Not only was he involved in the Manhattan Project, but he was also a developer of radiocarbon dating. A dirty little secret about radiocarbon dating is that Willard discovered is that, well, your atmosphere has to equalize. That hasn't happened. The mathematics on how long it would take for our atmosphere to equalize is 30,000 years. It hasn't equalized yet. I.e., what Libby discovered is that our atmosphere, according to radiocarbon dating, is under 30,000 years old. Do what you like with that math. I'm just telling you what he discovered. These are all on the screen, carbon dating results from dinosaurs. You probably didn't even know these existed, and that's because Western universities censored these results and fought vigorously for there to be no carbon dating done on dinosaurs. Now, in China and Hong Kong, places like that, they just wanted honest answers. Hey, what do the dinos test at? All of these dinosaurs here, save not one of them, tested because it's not just rock, it's actual bone that you've got. That's why you've got soft tissue all over inside of it. That's why you can carbon date it. All of these dinosaurs tested between 20,000 and 40,000 years old, the same age as your frozen mammoths and your other claimed Ice Age animals. The reason for that is not just that they lived at the same time, thus the reason that they carbon date the same, but because the atmosphere allowing for the massive Garden of Eden vegetation you find under the ground was an entirely different atmosphere. This right here, this little bitty guy, that's a modern horsetail plant trunk. This right here, going from side to side, that's the trunk right there of an ancient horsetail plant on the screen behind me. Bottom line, if you're testing for carbons, like in a radiocarbon test, and the carbon levels are wildly different in the past than they are today, and it's going to shoot out crazy results all over the place.
In other words, if radiation from the sun was different, then the results are not objective.
Which indeed it does. Okay, this right here is a modern dragonfly. Right up above it is an ancient dragonfly. Some of these had 3 feet wingspans. This animal right up here couldn't even lift off the ground and fly or breathe today. Now, here's another fun fact about radiocarbon dating. Not only do you find it in dinosaurs, you find it in oil. Oil is caused, you can form oil in under 5 minutes in a lab. Oil requires biological material, heat, and pressure, intense pressure. The same thing with coal, the same thing with diamonds. Okay, this guy here, his name is Fred. How you doing, Fred? This is a Sinclair dinosaur right next to the Dino Mart. The reason these dinosaurs are the logo for the Sinclair is because they used to say that dead dinosaurs is how oil was formed, because it's massive pockets of biological material that are underneath the ground. They've got another one over here. All 4 of those things mentioned have been found with C14 in them, which is what radiocarbon tests for. If the whole world were one big ball of carbon-14, it would have been all decayed. That's what you're measuring on the test, is the decay rate. How much has decayed? And you're starting with the assumption of how much there was at the beginning. So if you had a Garden of Eden style ancient world to facilitate most every creature that existed, this right here is a modern dragonfly, a little bitty tiny little guy right there at the beginning, and now something changed dramatically in moments or very rapidly. Right up above him is an ancient dragonfly. Then that would throw out big results on your carbon tests. Anyhow, if the whole world was one big ball of carbon-14, it would all be gone in 1 million years. Yet, you find it in dinosaur bones, all oil deposits, all coal deposits, and all diamonds have C14 in them, i.e. they can't be old. Man, you're looking at not just of the animals giant in the past, not just of the human skeletons, the Neanderthals. Man, these are heavy-duty human skeletons. The lizards are big, the elephants are mammoths, the tigers are saber-toothed. You got whales in every desert. You need a catastrophe of Earth coming so quick that it compresses entire ecological systems, entire ancient jungles, and all of their wildlife crushed underneath the ground to produce the oil and gasoline for the cars on that street over there. Anyhow, he's a good dinosaur. Love the Sinclair dinosaur. I'm a big dinosaur fan. Coincidentally, this geological column is sorted by weights and densities. And by the way, the dinosaurs you find in there, just like Belinda Lacoste Ranch, where you find dinosaurs mixed in every level of this stuff. Her property adjoins Dinosaur National Monument in Colorado. Well, this geological column, sorted by weights and densities, and inside rock layers like this, are littered with ancient squids in the Grand Canyon alone. Just one of the layers. Now, it's not just trees that you find standing upright and the layers are going through them, which means that you've got thousands of these, that the tree would have to be standing up for millions of years while the layers of dirt built up around it. But you've got, this is a nautiloid, that's an ancient squid. That nautiloid right there is standing upright. These are all fish fossils. These are all fish fossils. And these are probably 20 bucks. And there's so many. Look how many of them that there are. Look how many of them there are. Just little fish fossils. They're so common. And again, we're in the mountains right now, and they're just all over the place. One after the other after the other. A good-looking one costs more, or a fish eating another fish would cost a little more. Take a look at all these. Take a little look at them. And they're so common, they're so frequent, that they cost little more than the cost of a McDonald's hamburger. And what's actually called Nautiloid Canyon, because there's so many of them that came tumbling through that canyon with a sludge of mud and dirt that placed them there. And they're tumbling in all sorts of degrees because they were tumbling through there with water rushing them in that laid down those layers. But about an eighth of them are standing upright. So this means those poor squid, according to your modern theories of evolution, would have had to have been standing on their head for millions of years while the layer built up around them. Your entire Earth, in fact, there is the evidence for the global flood, is the entire surface of the Earth. The geological column, sorted by weights and densities, just like dirt does in a process called liquefaction, like what I've got in this motion art right here. Well, gee, George, it's not going to rain down limestone for 1 million years and then decide, okay, now I'm going to do sandstone. The layers, there's a scientific name for how layers like this are formed. It's called liquefaction. How this sands in motion water device is beginning to build layers and strata, just like the geological column behind me, right here inside this little water device. If underneath the ground you've got mammoths that are buried, like out in Waco, Texas, you've got a mother mammoth that's lifting up her baby on a tusk, found buried standing up. In Mongolia, you have dinosaurs in mid-battle with each other. You literally, in Mongolia, have dinosaurs in mid-battle with each other. They didn't even have time to look the other way. And whatever covered them, dirt covered them. Dirt and sludge cover them so fast while they're in mid-battle that they don't even have time to look at whatever it was that came and covered them and left them in positions like that underneath the earth. This is more than a trilobite found at the bottom, or a Precambrian earthworm. These are dinosaurs that didn't have time to stop fighting and look the other way, that are covered as fossils in earth. Now, if you go all the way to the outskirts, just the edges of the ice in places like Russia is where you started finding your frozen mammoths. This right here that we're looking at, this is a baby frozen mammoth. Its name is, they call it Dima. And this is one of many frozen mammoths that have been found in Siberia, in Russia, in edges of the ice. See, when water squirts up, when underneath, if you have big pockets of water underneath the ground, and you get one hairline fracture that runs the surface, it will follow the path of least resistance all around the globe and spew that water up, and it will, if you were close to where that water's coming out, it would vaporize you in seconds. If you were on the poles, that water would go up so high that it would come into space, that it would come down as freezing ice, raining on top of these creatures and burying them in seconds in ice and sludge. Frozen so quickly that they're standing up. And you're finding that the little bones in their bodies, the first one they found, he's taking a step, and every bone in his leg is broke from whatever, and bones all through his back are raining down on him. And the food in his mouth that he's not done chewing is all tropical food. This wasn't an ice age he was in. He was eating tropical food. Now I want you to take a good look at these layers of strata that have formed, identical to what you see, but on a very much smaller scale. Take a look at the strata that's formed right there. You see little layers of strata that have formed? And this is a cheap one, not even a nice one, with very many weights and densities of sands in it. And you can see the strata forming in minutes on this little tiny water with sand art device. More than this, Java Man, this was another buddy of Charles Lyell, who drew those stratification charts that are used in your kids' textbooks today, just like another buddy of his drew the fake embryo charts. Java Man, we know today, not only was the guy that put forth Java Man, this was a friend of Charles Lyell, who gave us the charts of the strata that we still use today. Well, his buddy was the one that gave us this wonderful piece of art following Piltdown Man, the famous fraud. We know today he was mixing bones in his basement, is what he was busted at, which is why people backed away from him, even back then, that wanted to support him. Java Man, ancient chimpanzee, modern chimpanzee. Java Man was a giant ancient chimpanzee. Big surprise. The first claimed missing link came from a man named Charles Dawson. A lot of Charleses surrounding this whole evolution thing. This hoax went on for 40 years. They told people, they said, well, if they kept it in a lockbox. They said, well, if Christians were allowed to examine it, they would destroy it, because here we have the evidence of a missing link. Well, even the science community later, because no other ones have been found. Well, let's take a look at what's in this locked box. Lo and behold, big surprise, it turned out to be a fraud. It was a monkey jawbone put on a human skull. You fast forward all the way to today and beyond Lucy, because they're still looking for these missing links. We can't find one. Well, Lee Berger over here, he's from Johannesburg, South Africa, as I understand it. This is also, as I understand it, the third time he's done this, and sold one of these to National Geographic. That's just my opinion. It's what I appear to be reading in the text. Well, here's the new Homo naledi that they pumped everywhere, particularly in Europe. People were sick of watching a documentary on it, because it's all that played on television. You're a monkey, you're a monkey, you're a monkey. Okay, I'd like you to take a look at it up here. Here's the skull for what they found. We did one of the best write-ups on this. Well, I did comparisons to other monkeys right there in the same area where they found the skeleton. And, well, that's a macaque monkey, and it's identical to Lee's missing link up there. Now, I'd like you to notice another thing. You see how this missing link has no forehead on the head? Now look at their recreation of it. Look at the size and scope of the giant Planet of the Apes forehead that they put on this thing to make it look like a person, like a monkey becoming a person. Giant forehead, now look at the skull. Well, there it is right there. No forehead whatsoever. Identical, coincidentally, to a macaque monkey. All right, so the scope of giant dinosaurs. One of the questions nobody asked, because everything in the past, all the fossils, these giant dinosaurs. Well, in evolution, you've got little things that are supposed to lead to bigger things. So where are the little things that lead to something like a dinosaur? There are none. And where people ask, okay, so the missing link between monkeys and man, well, that question only gets worse when you ask what led to the monkeys. Modern living sea creature, little triops. Modern, basically trilobite family guys. Ancient. These guys here that I'm looking at, these are trilobite guys. These guys here, the reason they're at the bottom is because they're little cleanup crews on the bottom of the ocean. Just like you got lots of stuff that does that right now today on the bottom of the ocean floor. In fact, it comes from the very families of these trilobite guys. This right here is a modern rodent, actually a rat. There beside it is an ancient rat. This right here is what they call an ancient winged terror. This is a bird, by the way, a pterodactyl-like bird. This thing here is about the size of a full-size, it is the size, full-size giraffe. So when you're looking at Nimrod, whether a book or movie version of it that are meant to go together with the Exodus, and you're reading about Lugalbanda and the Anzu bird, this is part of the epics from ancient Samaria. Actual documents coming right after the flood while he's building his tower. That's what those documents are literally covering. The oldest documents on your planet. Well, in those documents, when Lugalbanda, who in the biblical text is Chardlamer of Elam, when he's telling you that he had this egg of an Anzu bird, Lugalbanda the Anzu bird, and he was doing occult things to talk back and forth to the bird. Anyhow, he raised the bird, and it would swoop over armies, perhaps swoop in and kill men for him. But definitely, he records often, it was his guidance from the air, his dark bird guidance, Lord of the air. Well, when you're looking at the Argentavis Magnificence, well, Lugalbanda's story about his giant Anzu bird, a giant crow, a giant black crow, it starts to bring the story into a little more full focus, doesn't it? Noah had been preaching to those people for 120 years, 120 years. And on the day that the flood, when Methuselah died, and he knew, we're almost there. And they're getting ready and they're getting on board. On the day that the doors closed, and it says God closed the doors of that boat, was Dr. Jack Cuozzo. I used to speak to him on the phone here and there, but he actually passed away a few years ago. Did bar none. Some of the world's, did more research than anyone on the planet. They still use this stuff today in the science journals on Neanderthal juveniles. And here's what he found, is that a person that was the age of 40 years old, 40, would appear like they were in their early or hadn't even reached their 20s yet. The boat was finished, and Noah, inside of that boat, looking outside of that window that's described in Genesis, the top of the boat, and the hordes of mankind, as the rain, the water began to come down. The earth had already trembled, and there's water coming in, and it's coming in quick. It's about to be spiraling upwards. In his book, Buried Alive, he wrote that many of these, not all, some come after the flood, but many of these Neanderthal skeletons, heavy-duty human skeletons, were massively drowned to death. It began to rain. It began to come down. And as it came down hard, those that had heard of Noah, the very ones that had called him a fool, called him an idiot, laughed and mocked at that. Noah was the first conspiracy theorist. It's going to rain and drown you. Well, on that day, they came as a horde, an angry horde, as the waters were pouring down. This is according to Yasher. One that better displays that I've seen it in a museum of how they think the continents were formed. And first of all, it can't work this way because you have, for example, what they're stating here is that the continents shifted apart. You can't do that because of the fact there's dirt underneath there. So where it goes down into your beaches and then it drops underneath and comes back up on the other side, there's dirt under there, so the continents can't slide together or slide apart. This right here that I'm showing you on the screen, this is called the Mid-Oceanic Ridge.
Let's see.
The reason those areas where the crack is, and notice it's in the center of the oceans. That's because when the water came out and split forth and sunk down and formed your oceans, they go up, and then the cliff sides on the side, and then there's your beaches, pushing these continents upwards. These are rocks that spit straight up, and notice how they're right on the edge of the Rocky Mountains. Your mountain ranges are either little bitty on the edges of the coast, or they're big in the center of the continents. That's because when the flood occurred, when the water was spewing out from both sides, it compressed the continents in, and the mountains rose in the middle. And there's water coming in, and it's coming in quick. It's about to be spiraling upwards. And they came, and they could feel the rain coming down, and they're laughing. They screamed to him from the top of the window. They said, open the door. We're gonna die down here. Open the door. And Noah looked down from that window, and he screamed to them, where were your fears 120 years ago when I told you that this day would come? In fact, that probably constitutes most of them. Most of your fossil record is sea life, seashells, and clams from bottom to top. The rarest things are mammals. The very rarest things would be a cool looking dinosaur. Most of it is sea life, planktons, clams, seashells, sea stuff. Like a big marine catastrophe happened, and all those layers that's in our globe, they go clear around there, so none of it's localized. More than that, Yasher is giving you an exact set of descriptions of how Noah is going to pick the little animals that are going to go in that door. Narrow is the gate. That boat would equal 750 full-size rail cars today, or a full-size super tanker. In other words, it would hold, well, the amount of animals that you would need to go on that boat, if they were the size of full-size sheep, roughly 75,000 animals. Remember, you only need the land mammals on this boat. You don't need the amphibians, you don't need the viruses, you don't need the bacteria, you don't need the plants, you don't need the insects. The insects are going to float on all sorts of stuff, and you definitely don't need the fish. So some of these animals, and they portray them in movies as they're coming after to swallow the carnivorous creatures coming to, which makes great filmmaking. But the little bitty arms on that guy, he can't catch anybody. He's certainly not going to catch a deer. Not very many of them. And he's got to eat enormous amounts. Bears have claws. Yeah, it's true. Sometimes they're out there fishing. Yes, it's true. They can be carnivorous. But they like plants. And just because something has the equipment to kill doesn't mean that it has to. As food sources go away, and your new world, the plants are smaller. I'd like to credit Dr. Walter Veith, who gave all sorts of the studies done with the diets of animals. This was a hardcore atheist professor who came to believe that the world was created by God. And he did that, in part he did that in studies dealing with animals, dealing with the animals' diets, and finding that actually giving carnivorous animals vegetable diets actually improved the health of the animals. So creatures can chew, they can either chew a vegetable or they can chew other critters. And when things get desperate, they begin going to desperate measures. So in the ancient world, if you've got a guy like this, that's why you're hearing them be called dragons. When it comes running out of the brush at a village, you're looking at a desperate animal. And something today that may eat only undead things or may eat their eyeballs out. Well, in the ancient world, if its food sources are giant vegetables, giant plants and fruits that it feeds on, and that goes away, or even portions of the year it goes away, out of desperation for survival, that puppy has got to chew on whatever it can get its mouth on. This bird that I've got on the screen, isn't that bird beautiful? That's a Kia parrot from New Zealand. Isn't he absolutely breathtaking and gorgeous? Well, there he is pecking deep inside of the skin of something that he's just swooped down and killed with his friends. Here he is pulling the innards out of a living sheep as they swoop down and begin to peck. Look at the size of the beak on that thing. He can jump in, he can even kill a person that would come in as flocks. And farmers in New Zealand were angry that these things were killing their flocks of sheep. Was it these birds that had come to be known as the vampire parrots at that point? Well, their food source, the food source they had, the vegetables and the fruits that they enjoyed to eat, had been taken away from them, had been mulled out of the way. So these were not vampire birds. What they were was desperate birds that were now going to any length to survive. which is what happens as food sources begin to go away. When they begin to replant the food source, the vegetable food sources for these birds, they immediately left the sheep alone. As an animal becomes a scavenger attacking type animal, it starts to look like a scavenger type animal. In fact, I'm suggesting to you that you even have remnants of plants today that are giant in scope, that are leavovers from that ancient world. Following the flood, you still had, even some of the vegetation was enormous in scope following the flood. One here, this guy's called the Nanotyrannus. He's like a smaller version of a Tyrannosaurus Rex, is really what he is. And in fact, Mark Armitage was finding soft tissue inside. He found it in tons of dinosaurs. We certainly found it in these. And we have no idea what kind of fruits and enormous vegetables and what kind of proteins or other nutrients were power-packed inside those things before the flood. What we know from the biblical text is that all of the animals had different food sources. They were living from the vegetation and the trees. A meat eater could get from a plant what he needs today to get by killing another animal. A lot of the stuff before the flood is enormous in size. The stuff after the flood, much of it is little tiny. And by the way, the creatures before the flood, even things that have big sharp teeth in their mouth, just because something has big teeth in its mouth, it can chew a vegetable with that, or it can chew another critter with that. As you lose things over time, things begin to fight at each other for survival. If we go with more realistic numbers, you're only using 12% of that boat's capacity. So in layman's terms, you could have played soccer inside that ship with all those animals on there. You've got genes within you and your digital programming code. And different combinations of those, like a Rubik's Cube, produce different effects, like white skin, the color of your eyes, the color of your hair. With dogs, is it a bald dog, a fluffy dog, a spotted dog, a furry dog, a tall dog, a small dog, a hairy dog, a bald dog? But you can't get turtle coat out of them. And dogs don't have whale coat. And you don't have rhinoceros coat. That Rubik's Cube has only got so many squares with so many colors. Now, there's a bunch. 99%. Everything that's ever lived is gone today. So you started with a bunch of stuff, now you've got less stuff. And all of the animals were around the boat. It says that there were animals as far as the eye could see into the distance surrounding that boat. Noah was given special directions, according to Yasher, of what animals to take and what animals not to take, which ones to choose of the pairs of two. They came as a horde, an angry horde, as the waters were pouring down. This is according to Yasher. And they're surrounding the boat, and their leadership is looking up. And they look straight up at that window described in the book of Genesis. And they're yelling to Noah, "Let us on board, open these doors." They're screaming up there at him. And Noah appears at that window described in Genesis. And he yells back to them, as you called me fools. You called me fools. The sixes came up. Now you stand here and you say you want on this boat. And not only does your mathematics, when you rewind time backwards, which I've done in videos such as Noah, your population growth, taking into account with the slow conquering of the entire globe, the increase in food production abilities, etc., is going to rewind you back in time, actually to about 2400 BC. But the oldest vineyards, wine vineyards on earth are also, as well as your oldest written documents, both trace backwards, specifically and precisely, to that spot in time, and coincidentally, that spot right there, where the boat that saved all mankind is said to have landed on the planet. And they screamed back, they said, "You open those doors, we're gonna die out here." And then they ran inward. The hordes that had come, that had surrounded the boat, they ran inwards. You look scared now. Where were your fears 120 years ago when I told you that this day would come? And they said, let us in, let us in, let us in now. Where were your fears at that hour? And they said, we're storming that boat. And it says that they came in as a mad, frenzied horde. And the waters poured down even more intense. Okay, there's absolutely no way on the planet Earth. There's no way on the planet Earth to get rocks to balance like that. I want you to notice how small that is. I'm going to come around the side of it. Come here. And inward. The hordes that had come, that had surrounded the boat, they ran inwards. And it was at that moment, you open those doors. And Noah replied, he said, that they ran inwards, that the waters came down hard, and the animals kicked outwards. No, you're not getting on this boat. And at that moment, the water began to rise like this. As the waters came in, the animals kicked outwards, and madness went every direction, and the chaos ensued. That's where the water broke free from those massive cracks. There's still water that we have no idea where it's coming from. Volcanic water coming from those cracks right now today. When the mountain ranges are formed, they're coming up, and you've got calamity throwing rocks and stones everywhere. The earth split open. The earth split open. You had enormous pockets of water underneath the ground in the ancient world. More than that, the spot that the boat took off from is right up here. You're as far from the edges of any of those cracks. If you were by the crack, it would vaporize you. And the animals kicked outwards and pushed the hordes back. Boom, boom, boom. And it was at that very moment that the waters rushed inward. If you're on the poles, up here or down here, the water is going to go up so high, it's going to come back down as, guess what? Ice. And the boat began to spiral upwards in seconds, bury those creatures. And Noah, gripping on with his family inside, it says in that moment in the text that every creature on board, as the boat spiraled upwards, screamed out in its own tongue. It can't go up immediately and spiral the boat upwards, but it can go up fast, which is exactly what would have occurred at the very spot on the globe, where Noah's Ark took off from. But if you were right here, the furthest from it, that water's going to rain down fast, and then suddenly it's going to break and go upward, and your boat is going to rest atop the waters. And Noah, gripping on with his family, prayed under his breath. He spoke, Lord, please remember us. Please remember me, your servant. And it states at that moment in the text that it was then that the boat rested peacefully atop the waters. Thank you for watching Pre-Flood by the God in a Nutshell Project. This is the year this is being released, the year 2020. That's a year that the vision becomes clear. It's a Joseph time period. I want to thank all of you for watching. Here's what a complete set, well, this is actually 2 sets is what this is. But there's the soft covers. And here I'm losing them on the end. There's the soft covers, and there's what the hard covers look like. That's the hard cover of Pre-Flood right there. And this is what it looks like on the inside. So it's all HD, high definition images on every single page. So right down over here, this is what the Exodus looks like. This is the soft cover version of the Exodus. And these are just absolutely gorgeous. I can't get over how well these things look. You're gonna go through the true Osiris. It's covered who he is in the ancient world. And this is the hardcover and soft cover of the Exodus. This is the hardcover and soft cover of Nimrod.
That's good.
And finally, just like you're seeing the layers of strata from the ancient world and the past behind me, this is Pre-Flood by God in a Nutshell. Speaking of Berkeley, while we're picking on them for a moment, Oftentimes, there are top-level PhDs that sometimes don't know these basic things. This comes out of Berkeley, and I find this fascinating because I come from a math background. My dad taught advanced mathematics for university professor for years, teaching advanced mathematics. Part-time, he did this while he worked at Shell, so I grew up with this. And Rice University had actually done math tests to see if evolution could even work. There's no mathematical you need things to improve over time. Obviously, there's not going to be math for that. It's not going to be supported by the universal language of mathematics in any way. This painting behind me was done by Salvador Dali. What you've got on this painting is Jesus Christ, and he is on top of a tesseract. What a tesseract is, it's a four-dimensional object, a higher dimensional object in a lower dimension or three-dimensional reality. It's unfolded into that reality. So you're only seeing the edges of the actual object, the larger object, just its edges unfolded in. God seems to love geometry and numbers and mathematics. In fact, he's got an entire book titled Numbers. Now, coincidentally, this object, the tesseract, makes the shape of the cross. After the Hebrews had their exodus from the land of the pyramids, in the book of Numbers, well, when they're moving loose in the wilderness, and God can come off like he's sort of a very particular guy. He doesn't do a lot of explaining either. This object, the tesseract, makes the shape of the cross in our three-dimensional reality, upon which Salvador Dali drew the Savior on top of that dimensional tesseract. Well, in the case of the Hebrews wandering in the wilderness, God said you can't camp northeast or northwest. You can only camp this wide, and up north. And then he wanted the tribes numbered so you could have a count. Well, if you go through and you do the numbers, the math, and use the exact instructions that God gave to the Hebrews for their camp, with the Levites in the middle, the heart of that camp, it makes the shape of a giant cross wandering on the desert floor. It's often important to listen more because it will turn out that those pages, those scriptures, those numbers all have a meaning.
This is 1,000 years before Christ.
That were in Jesus' hands and feet. It wasn't the nails that held him to that cross. It was his love for you and me. Now, speaking of dimensions, right here on this page, I have two little characters. I have Tom and I have Sally. Now, Tom and Sally are living in a two-dimensional world. We live in a three-dimensional world. Tom and Sally are on a sheet of paper. They live in a two-dimensional world. So Tom and Sally, in their world, they're very hindered. See, I can get up face to face with Tom or Sally, and they don't even know that I'm there in their two-dimensional world. I could pass a ball through their world, and all they would see is a circle open and close. In fact, when Tom looks over at Sally, Sally, all he sees is a straight line.
Yeah, buddy.
Tom can't even see Sally as she is. But from my three-dimensional perspective, I can see the fullness of Tom and Sally. And talking about dimensions, that brings us immediately to time. And I've often said, if it's a problem that Stephen Hawking couldn't solve, it must be a problem so simple even a child can understand it. Time has been a puzzle since the beginning. Let's see if we can solve a brief history of time in under about 60 seconds. Now let me ask you this. If in a higher dimension you can see a greater picture more, what do you think God sees when he looks at us? Your reality, your three-dimensional reality, its very base, is made of quantum particles. Reality is made of things that cannot be regarded as real. That comes from the Jewish physicist Niels Bohr. Those particles are the quantum particles. Why the quantum particles break all of the rules, all the laws of physics, and drive the guys in the science videos crazy? Because they're breaking all the standard laws. Because those particles, you're looking at the moment that reality becomes when you zone into those particles. It's interactive. So those particles are making up a non-random reality. If reality did not have a source, if something were not making those particles, it would be totally random, like fuzz on your screen. But yet it's not. It's precise every minute. And just as Max Planck gave us measurements for, it's moving as a continuum, a live stream. And just as we find in our measurement problems, it behaves both as packets and as waves, simultaneously, both at once. And little particles at the base of it are going bloop, 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 and appearing so fast that it makes that continuum. So I guess the question would really be, where are those particles coming from? Where's that live stream flowing through? What's producing this image we call reality? Now, seeing as that's the case, or appears to be the case, should we be terribly surprised in those ancient pages, because this planet comes with a book, should we be terribly surprised in those pages we're being told that reality has a trash folder, and that the stuff in that trash folder doesn't get deleted? And that's a bad thing. A trash folder for the stuff that bites the hand that feeds. Now, I want to take this a step further and come out of the fourth dimension into the third dimension. If I take a cube, a three-dimensional cube, just a box, a perfectly square box, like you might get at a store, and I were to open that box up and make it a two-dimensional geometric object, well, it becomes a cross. And by the way, portions of that mathematics worked on by Stephen Hawking himself surrounding black holes and large objects. You have something called time dilation. I don't know whether a black hole is real or not, but that's really a mute to the argument. I'm talking about the math of it for just a second. If you have a large object in space, then time mathematically would slow down. You have whole movies about this, event horizon and such, and you're going in and the time has stopped. You go up and you come back and the brother is younger. All sorts of neat little equations for this. Time behaves in funny ways. Well, if you've got a condensation of mass, that's your particles that are making up your black hole or your large planet or whatever it is that's slowing the time down, well, that's the same thing that occurs on your computer screen when you are producing a large object on your screen. It's got to render all of those pixel particles. And around that rendering, the time, the subset, just like you're in a subset of reality, the subset of time has slowed down around that object. Not only this, but if I take a look at this cross made out of a cube, a tesseract can also be a cube made into a cross. Well, if I count the squares on this two-dimensional cube made from a three-dimensional object, they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. More than this, for there to be an image on the screen, an image in reality, a three-dimensional reality, that means that something has to be providing all of those pixels. And the reason they're breaking all of the rules is because they're coming from the place that makes the rules. When you hear the science guys say that there is no way on God's green earth that this place could have been created in 6 days, on the 7th God rested. Well, brothers, have you not read Max Planck's work? This man here gave you the measurements for time. And once you're doing your measurement, they're now behaving according to all your standard laws of physics, because no matter how quickly you do your measurement of those particles, it's already become a part of the past by sheer virtue of doing the measurement. It's become a part of the past. It's no longer movable or changeable or fixable. When you're looking at the particles, the quantum particles, you're looking at the future, the place where reality becomes. You're looking at that very second. If I'm reading Max properly, not only was this created in 6 days, but every second, according to your own measurements, this place is being recreated and maintained as those pixels that are flowing through. It's being recreated millions of times a second. And that's why they're appearing like this.
Crazy,
when you're looking at
huh?
your computer screen, which is a collection of pixels. And mind you, when you're looking at a person on that screen, you're not looking at the person, you're looking at an illusion of that person. So what am I looking at when I'm looking at you? And you're consciously plugged in and running loose in a body in this little place. This place, reality, the bet, our home, has a source. And I didn't pick for that bet to be there when I said that. What is consciousness? Where's that at? How much does that weigh? When you take the information on a hard drive, does it weigh more when you fill up the thumb drive than it does when it's empty? What is a thought, an idea?
He's on.
That live stream, where does it come from? In the Bible, it says you are already seated
Preach.
in heavenly places. In layman's terms, you're plugged into this place, and when your body falls dead, where are you now? Guys, I hope this man is in heaven and that there was a change in his life. But you media fellas, the only time you gave him exposure or allowed his books to sell is if you could push him out there to tell everybody in that chair that science says there is no God. Men who believe in science know that the universe has no space for God. The way he would tell you that is out of his one eye that worked. And his chair would allow him to talk to you through his one eye. Reality is a subset of a much larger, far more complex reality. That it comes from a larger place, not a smaller place, which is what your current sciences say. That in the beginning, there was nothing, and then it exploded. I don't know how you get the math for that. I come from a little bit of a math background. Now, when you're looking at the construct of time, God would be outside of, greater than time. If I took a circuit board, like this board right here, and on one end of the circuit board, I put a big red button, and on the other end of the circuit board, I put a screen, just a digital screen. And then the purpose of the circuit board was to come up with a mathematical equation. So when I hit the button, the circuit's little electrodes would take the time that it takes to go through the circuit board. That could be nanos of a second. And on the other end, boom, it comes up with whatever the answer to the equation is. Well, here's the thing, is that the information that equaled the answer to that equation was available before I hit the button. They gave Stephen Hawkins Isaac Newton, Sir Isaac Newton, the father of physics, chair, his position, his chair at Cambridge University. That made my heart sink. In the beginning, then there was nothing and it exploded. You are living in an incredibly intelligent and precise place. All of the stars that you see in the heavens above, you're situated in a way specifically where you can look at them. And everything here, coincidentally, goes in circles. And inside that subset of reality, all the biological stuff appears to be built right out of scratch from digital coding, three-dimensional digital coding. And DNA, that is and has always been the living software, the actual biological software of life itself. It was Sir Isaac Newton, the father of your modern physics, who stated, if the Bible be true, the time is coming in the future when men shall travel at 50 miles an hour or more. That was Sir Isaac Newton. And the construct of that reality, everything goes round and round, round and round, round and round. If you are looking at space, no matter how one believes that space works, everything here is in circles, going round and round, round and round. And that's no matter what you think is going around what. It goes round and round, round and round, round and round. Just like a test environment on a computer. So, and in these books, you're going to go through time and consciousness and the origin of these things. So inside the base of reality, all of the biological stuff, like you and me and all the plants, they have programming code, coincidentally inside the blood. Then, just to top that level, underneath the base of it, you've got the quantum particles, just like on a computer program, the ones and zeros, yeses and nos, which make up the base framework of this thing we call reality. And reality appears to have a source, a live stream feeding it. So when you're talking about time, that's the yod back there, the 10, that dangles like a thought between heaven and earth, a number of completion. When you're talking about time, you are never living in the past. You are also never living in the future. No matter when it is, you're always standing on the moment that matters most, the moment that determines everything. No matter when it is always right now. But everything here, including your biblical pages, and most assuredly this set of things, brings to full color life the fact that you appear to be living in a test. They're all high definition imagery on every single page. So you're going to be taking a journey through the ancient world. This set of things is the beginning of your history. Every single page is high definition images, full glossy. The fronts and the backs are beautiful. Here are the words of Sir Isaac Newton, the father of physics. About the time of the end, a body of men will be raised up who will turn their attention to the prophecies and insist upon their literal interpretation in the midst of much clamor and opposition. It was Isaac Newton. But Berkeley ran these tests. It's called mitochondrial Eve, a dirty little secret. This was done by Berkeley. And they were looking at mutation rates. Now, by sheer virtue of doing the test alone, where your mutations are errors, they're junk that's collecting over time in the code. So by trying to go backwards to a mutation-free state by sheer virtue of the test, it's like these people don't even think. By sheer virtue of doing the test, you're rewinding to a perfect state. Now, what they did to fix the problem, let me tell you the fix, because you read these extensive, very confusing articles in science journals and all this, which is common par for what they did in the Wikipedia page for it, is you could take 10 PhDs and you couldn't screw on a light bulb with what they're saying on those pages. Let me break it down for you like this. They mixed monkey numbers with human numbers to get the numbers that worked for them. Anywhere else that'd be considered fraud, but we're in an upside down world, right? So why not? When they looked at the actual real world data, which you can do, you rewind backwards, you find two things, just like the two trees. You find number one, that every race, creed, and color rewinds backwards to a single woman on this planet. That was an unexpected find. That's huge. They weren't hoping for that, I assure you. But more than that, using the actual data, that woman lived 6,000 years ago. Now, you can run from those numbers all you want, but that's what the actual data, and no matter what they let them give you convoluted stuff. I'm telling you, I come from a math background. I'm telling you the real numbers. You run the numbers yourself. A mere 6,000 years old. Their article titles, and this was in 1998. No need to panic. Fellas, we really do. I'm just being straight with you. We, in a general, practical sense, we need the science to step out of fantasy land and make its way back to the world of reality. Charles Darwin was a whiny little 22-year-old that came from a well-to-do family who was trying to find something to even do with him. He had a degree in theology from Oxford. What are you going to do with him? He's got a degree in theology, not any sciences, from Oxford University. They'll portray him on walls and things as if he was going on a science expedition on a major ship. Science expedition, that was the HMS Beagle. That stands for Her Majesty's ship. It's a military vessel. He's out there drawing finches and stuff. What I'm telling you is this, he was the only guy on a boat without a job. There's a 22-year-old, 150, more than that, years ago, who wrote the basis for all of your sciences by theorizing that the Planet of the Apes movies were real, that there was a monkey, that everybody was a monkey in his 22-year-old view, right? Because he was smarter than everybody else. He died a miserable old man. And his theory not only disagrees with every single written record on earth, so you have to believe that that 22-year-old knew better than every single person that had lived before him and every document that they wrote, and that they didn't even understand what they were writing in the very hours that they lived in, but instead that they were monkey people. But further than that, one would have to believe that every single science we have, from the little cells that we look at in our skin to the stars and the heavens above, is wrong, and that that 22-year-old from 150 years ago is correct. Everything here is the reverse of Darwin's theory. His theory says things improve over time. Your car parked outside in your drive is not improving over time, nor can it self-build itself. Everything here declines over time. Oh, with one exception, except for things that have digital coding, like the entire construct of you is made like a little bitty zip file. A cell combines with an egg, and it opens up with complete body plans of digital coding to literally write a human being into reality, birthed into this place, consciously plugged in, and all of it from scratch. So you hardcore atheists, guys, I think you're definitely gonna have to leave Maneto's Zeus, ruling for 20 years, in there for at least that, throwing lightning bolts down at mud puddles to get them to come to life so they can turn into monkeys and monkey people, because we all know that if you breed enough monkeys, you obviously get people. I mean, that's scientific, correct? Guys, you find whales in every desert and seashells on every mountain on Earth, not monkey men. So when the hardcore occultists of this world today share with me, some of them have and do, that they do their little ceremonies and private rituals or black magic sex parties. That's really what they are. Involve demonic stuff in their black magic sex parties. And things step out of thin air. Or going all the way back to a Merkur or Nimrod, who told me that he summons the Inky to step out of this dimensional hole right here, right into this place. Well, gentlemen, take a sip of your brandy in the back room, because I believe them. In fact, let me share with you this. I actually call them the deal cutters. It's impressive. First time you see it, something pop right out of thin air. Well, either impressive or it's terrifying. But no matter which, you gotta wonder why something's popping out of thin air to talk or pay attention to you. It's kind of unusual, isn't it?
Very.
No matter what they're doing, I promise you, they're trying to cut a deal. And those deal cutters always want you to say certain words. Isn't that strange? It's almost like you're dealing with, I don't know, intelligent snakes. And speaking of snakes, that hops us right back over, back where we started, to the first serpent. Just like the first message to Pharaoh is a snake, or the law of first mention, right here in Genesis 3:5. Ye shall be as gods. Now, doesn't God himself state, choose this day who you serve? And since this is Manito here that wrote both your bogus and your bad timelines, tells me that, well, right here he states that he likes Enoch. Well, Manito's in luck. I like Enoch too. In fact, it's a long prophecy in the book of Enoch that takes you right through the hours of the pyramid, which are a foreshadowing leading right to the moments that you're living in now and the time period to come of the Antichrist. But right there in the book of Enoch, he's telling you the whole story in advance, before that flood of the Exodus. I think even Manetho would want me to go ahead and let Enoch share it. As much as I like Manetho up there, I think I'm going to have to bail on his timeline and pass on this one. I think we're going to have to be doing some adjustments to his Truth of Thoth timeline in this documentary. Going a step further than all of that, and I speak boldly, respectfully, right in this second, right now. University and secular guys that have been stating that the Exodus didn't happen, or there was no evidence of the Exodus, and have been fighting against the veracity of the Bible, some of you investing your entire lives in it. I know what the source of that is. I want you to know this, and I speak to you boldly, right this second, right here, right through this screen. That all ends right here, right now, and is ending today. Boo. And how can an ending be complete without a few fireworks at the ending as we carry this thing out? I want to thank you for watching Pre-Flood by the God in a Nutshell Project. My number one goal, above all else, of course, we love it if you buy something from us. We can actually use it, those that donate to us. My number one thing is that you make it. Even if you don't like me or you disagree with me on 9 jillion things, or you think I move my hands weird. Man, make it to heaven. Jesus Christ is real. Even since the beginning, that really is, that's the number one message of the God in a Nutshell things. So, and that's why we put forth this coin has, and no matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican, these coins are historic. They have the third temple on them. And on the front is Donald Trump and Cyrus. There's a significant number of us that find real correlations between the two and believe that all of these things, even the presidents before, it's all a prophecy towards some of the stuff you see on the end, like that third temple there. Joseph period. That's a Joseph coin. It's made by my friend Mike Hughes. He went to Egypt with me. He's supported a lot of biblical projects over the years. That's Joseph on that coin right there. And on the back is that's the temple that made the prosper of all of Egypt. Little guy right here, this is just a foreshadowing of where we're coming up to. The next video, full-length video, is going to be Nimrod, the next video in this set. We might put up other things between then, but here's the Inky right there, stepping through on this tablet, his little dimensional doorway. We're going to be talking a lot about that in Nimrod. The book's already available with the book Exodus. I've turned the donation pages back on at godinanutshell.com. We could actually use your help and support. The next sets of things that we've got coming out that we're working on right now are the actual movies, Exodus and Nimrod. Those are both coming next. So, and you can get the God in a Nutshell. You can get the God in a Nutshell from any device that you have, your home computer, your iPad, your laptop. Here it is on a laptop right here. This is what God in a Nutshell looks like. You can go over to the donate section and make a donation if you want by simply clicking that button there, or to find the books, the coins, old DVDs of God in a Nutshell, all of that. And we've got sections in here that have videos that are not on YouTube. Right in here, you can click shop. You just scroll down to whatever it is that wets your whistle, and it'll be right in there. So there's the shop section. Even that looks beautiful. I always like it when the stuff looks gorgeous. So this is the entire set available at God in a Nutshell, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Walmart, anywhere books are sold. So we've got some excellent writers over at God in a Nutshell. One in particular that's an incredible writer. We can use some more writers over at God in a Nutshell. Our shipping has gotten a lot better over the years.
I highly suggest you go and check him out. He is still producing some videos here now, but go and check out his other videos, which that's precisely what we're gonna check out right now. In the middle of the war that we wage with Rome. If you're interested in this game, currently I'm with the Macedonians, and left of me is Rome, north is Egypt that I weakened. So they're kinda stopped right now, they're pausing. But now, Rome wants to get here, wants to see what's up here. He needs land, I guess. Well, this hill ain't big for both of us, buddy. But before that, let me put another video. I gotta find something really good. Hmm. I want to find something interesting. We're gonna listen now a interview that William Lane Craig is being interviewed about the 6 arguments for God, for existence of God. I'm thinking whether we should go that, or maybe do a little debate. Oh boy. Oh boy. So we got 3 we got 3 awesome minds. We got William Lane Craig, John Lennox, and the chemist, James Tour. Okay. So
let me say something.
Excuse me. They are at this lunch with some young folks, some students, I think. And so they discuss. It's like a discussion. It's like a exchange of thoughts. So this should be interesting, knowing their philosophical capabilities, just mental, intellectual capabilities in general. So enjoy.
A little bit controversial about this.
He said, they've silenced me. I said, who? Who?
The
He said, my
gatekeepers.
colleagues have silenced me.
And you can't challenge a student anymore because they'll be offended. So to me, this is not a philosophical thing.
She wouldn't shake hands with me. Made it absolutely clear she would have nothing to do with me.
You are not to react in any way to these sorts of personal attacks.
I'm just going to open up. Who'd like to fire the first question? As a professor, I know the first question is always the hardest, but once that first question is asked, then everybody starts asking. Okay, go ahead, Zach.
So as you've been working on your systematic theology, what has been the greatest area of growth or encouragement that you found?
I'm working on a multi-year project of writing a systematic philosophical theology, which has not been done for centuries. And it's been a tremendous learning project for me. And so there's kind of a difference between growth and I think the second thing you asked was interest, right?
Encouragement.
Encouragement, yeah. Certainly in the growth area, it would be the excursus that I've written on the origin and evolution of life. This required me to start learning about organic chemistry and, you know, all of these things like enantiomers and stereoisomers and things like this. And so that has been really stretching and yet at the same time fascinating and insightful, revealing. So that's been, I think, probably one of the areas of growth that has been most challenging for me. In terms of encouragement, boy, there's just been so many areas. My study of the doctrine of faith was really encouraging in that, this is going to sound odd, I think, to most of us, but one of the key issues in doctrine of faith is whether or not faith implies belief. There is a movement among contemporary Christian philosophers to say that faith doesn't require belief, that you can have faith in God without believing that God exists.
It's nonsensical, isn't it?
And they offer various arguments about this. Their motivation is good, I think. They want to make room for doubters in the Christian church and to say, even though you're in doubt about whether God exists, you can still trust in him and act on this. And that's what real faith is. And my concern is that by denying that faith implies belief, it could lull seekers into a false sense of security, that they think they have saving faith when in fact they're still on the road to real saving faith, which I would argue does imply belief in the truths of Scripture. And so that study of faith has been really interesting and encouraging to me.
Good. Well, you know, I'm really glad you're learning organic chemistry. It's never too late to learn.
May I ask a question, Bill, about your question? How are you defining both faith and belief in that statement? In English, at least, you've got fides for faith, which really conveys the idea of trust and fidelity.
Yeah.
And those give separate nuances, but how would you yourself define them in order to make the distinction that you suggested that some people were making?
Yeah, I think there is a distinction to be made between propositional faith and personal faith. Propositional faith would be, I think, believing a proposition to be true.
So that's belief.
Yes, and so faith in that sense would be entail believing the proposition to be true. But personal faith could be simply trusting in a person. And in that case, you might not be confident that the person is telling the truth or whatever, but you're trusting him. And so I do think you can have this sort of personal trust without propositional belief. But the claim of these other scholars is more radical than that. They want to say that you don't even need to believe the propositions to be true in order to be said to have faith that they're true. They almost collapse faith into hope. You know, you can take hope as a propositional attitude. I hope that such and such. And so they think having faith that, though it's a propositional attitude, they don't think it involves belief that.
It's interesting because I come up against, in the scientific world, a huge confusion as to the nature of faith. And I was quite surprised, I suppose, to find the following definition in Webster's dictionary. Faith, noun, believing where there's no evidence.
Oh.
And the new atheist redefinition of faith is one of the difficulties I have with many of my very bright colleagues in Oxford. They think that faith is a religious word and it means believing where there's no evidence. They have no idea that as scientists, They have a fundamental faith in the rational intelligibility of the universe. And so it's virtually impossible to get across to them that there is such a concept as evidence-based faith, which of course the New Testament requires, based on the resurrection of Jesus, for example. I'd love your lateral comments on that, Bill, in the connection with what you're saying.
Yeah. The people that I'm interacting with are even more radical than that, because they're not talking about faith as something that is done in the absence of evidence. They think that faith doesn't involve believing something at all. So that a person could be a Christian even though he doesn't believe that God exists. And I think that's fantastic. Fantastic in the sense of unbelievable. That seems quite contrary to the New Testament. And I try to show that in the New Testament, the way the word faith is used, that it does involve propositional belief.
Yes.
And a good example would be James 2:19, where it says, do you believe that God exists? Now that's a propositional truth, and it is the object of belief. Do you believe that God exists? Well done. Even the demons believe. Yes. And tremble. Now, clearly, demonic faith cannot be trust in a person. It is propositional belief. So that's a clear example of where you have faith in the sense of propositional belief that can't be reduced to merely personal trust. So that was one of the interesting verses, and read a number of commentaries on James, and this is an issue which biblical theologians aren't even aware of, so they never address it in their commentaries. But it's where the dialogue between biblical theology and philosophy can be fruitful.
One of my concerns is somebody more in the sciences and engineering side. There are people like high-profile scientists who use their position of authority to talk down to philosophy, say we don't need it. And do you think there can be something that can be done to, I guess, re-encourage people to have respect for the field, especially students, to see the joys of philosophy and realize that it's worth studying, it's not useless?
He, in his experience, has detected that people in the sciences look down on the field of philosophy, and he wonders, is there something that can be done to try to improve the attitude of scientists toward
That's a good
philosophy?
question.
If I were the Minister of Education, I would insist that every student in every discipline learn some philosophy. That used to be the case in Scotland, which made it preeminent in education. It tends to be the case less so now than it used to be in Europe. I've always been interested in European thinking, and it's noticeable the ease with which many of my European friends deal with philosophical concepts. And the further east you go towards Russia, the better. Whereas in Britain, they're often philosophically illiterate. And I agree with Einstein, who once said, and I think Bill will like this, he probably knows this quote, "The scientist is a poor philosopher." And I think they prove that. Stephen Hawking, and I interact with him in my book, it's very interesting that Lord Rees, our astronomer royal, commenting at Stephen Hawking's passing, remarked on Hawking's giving people a choice. You either choose God or science. And he said, I know Stephen Hawking, he's written papers with him, and he said he knows little theology and no philosophy, and I wouldn't listen to a thing he says on either subject. And the tragedy to my mind, and I know Bill will have plenty to say about this, the tragedy to my mind is that many of them think that philosophy has nothing to say or nothing to do. And as a result, they make utterly ridiculous statements. And Dawkins seems to me not to have a philosophical nerve in his, well, whatever part of his body he counts as a seat of something. So I just feel there is a battle on hand. And over life, I started as a pure mathematician with a profound interest in language of various kinds. And I study philosophy more and more, and I found it inordinately helpful, not only in my scientific thinking, but in my biblical thinking. And to look at Scripture through a philosopher's eyes, which Bill has been brilliant at doing all of his life, I think is a hugely important perspective. My mentor, who was a classicist, Professor David Gooding, who died a few years ago, he used to say, John, spend quite a bit of time looking at Scripture through pagan eyes. In other words, take it philosophically and see what it's saying about the big questions. That doesn't answer your question, but what we can do about it individually is model it and show people that by thinking about the big questions, we can actually help them get more established in their own Christian faith and practice. So, Bill, over to you.
Yeah.
That's a bleat from a philosophical pygmy.
Right. I think that you're quite right in emphasizing the utility of philosophy for those doing science. But how do you get the scientist to understand this? The irony is that the philosophy of science is one of the main sub-disciplines of philosophy, which is represented by brilliant thinkers today and fine journals like the British Journal for the Philosophy of Science or Philosophy of Science in the United States. These are first-rate philosophical and scientific journals. And often in physics, these sorts of foundational questions will be asked, like in the journal Foundations of Physics. Philosophical questions will be explored. So perhaps we can just try to open the minds of these scientists to the philosophy of science in order to help them to see how worthwhile this is, that it's a major discipline, an important field, and that if they ignore it, they do so to their detriment and simply show their ignorance of their own field. So I like to tell folks that whatever field you're at in the university, there will be a philosophical component, like philosophy of education, philosophy of business, philosophy of literature, philosophy of biology, philosophy of physics. Every discipline has these foundational questions, and we need to help them see that they cannot afford to be ignorant of these foundational questions if they're to do really first-rate work in their own field, and try to simply broaden their horizons a little bit.
Stephen Hawking's second last book has one of the most marvelous examples of what's wrong with many scientists. He starts off by listing a number of big questions. Questions of God, the status of the universe, the status of life, and so on. And he says something like this. He said, these are the questions that philosophers used to try to answer. But now, I quote now, philosophy is dead, and it has been left to scientists to bear the torch of truth for the coming generations or something. And then the rest of his book proves to the hilt that he's right about himself. Philosophy is dead.
What do you think is the difference in capacity of a person without the Holy Spirit and with the Holy Spirit to understand and to know? And how would that impact the way that we even have these discussions?
Let me say something a little bit controversial about this, because this was a question that I had to face in starting this systematic philosophical theology. There is a movement within German pietism called Theologia Regeneratorum, which is theology of the regenerate, and that the unregenerate person cannot really do theology. And it seems to me that that's wrong. I don't think you need to have a special illumination of the Holy Spirit in order to see and understand Christian truth claims. It seems to me that objective truth is accessible to everybody. But the difference the Holy Spirit would make, it seems to me, would be not in your cognitive ability, but in the openness of your heart to accept and embrace those truths. And there, I think it makes a tremendous difference, because the unregenerate heart will be callous and cold and resistant to God. So his problem isn't his inability to grasp truth cognitively. It will be in his inability to embrace and accept that truth for himself. And so I would see the role of the Holy Spirit as involved in that restoration of the heart to make it amenable to the Christian truth that can be grasped.
And I think that Paul makes a similar point. In Acts 17, he quotes with approval the insight of a pagan writer. In other words, you don't have to be a Christian indwelt by the Holy Spirit to see whether an idea has something in it or not. And I think that's very important, because God has given us that capacity, every one of us, to perceive things. And when Paul's talking about the fact that there is a creator and his power is perceivable, and he uses that word advisedly, I think, in the universe, he's talking about the reaction of everybody to that universe. I would twist the question slightly. I like twisting questions. And say that one of the underlying issues that's raised by this is the relationship of reason to revelation. In other words, people sometimes worry about people like Bill and me. They certainly worry about me. I shouldn't say they worry about him. But they come along and say, look, isn't there a big danger that you chaps who are pretty well educated in certain directions are trusting your reason and not the Holy Spirit? Now this is, it seems to me, a very important question that's tangential to your point. And what has helped me considerably on this store is, first of all, that well, let me put it this way, very simply. And it's this. I have a little analogy I tell in other circumstances about my Aunt Matilda, who's baked a cake, not as nice as the one I got this evening, but baked a cake. And I asked all the Nobel Prize winners to analyze it scientifically and give me an account of it. And they all come up and say what the chemistry of it is, and et cetera, et cetera. And I say, now, ladies and gentlemen, before you go, tell me why she made the cake. You physicists, now you won the Nobel Prize, sir. Why did she make the cake? Well, I can't tell you, nor can the chemist, and so on. And we'll not know unless she reveals it. Now, this is at the purely human level. This is why the analogy interests me. We will not know unless she reveals it. Now, how does she reveal it? Usually by speaking. I made this cake for my cousin Jimmy. Now, what happens now? Do we switch cognition off when she reveals it? Of course we don't. We analyze with our reason what our reason couldn't access unless she gave it to us. Now, it seems to me at a higher level, this is what happens. God has given us sources of information. One is the natural world. One is our experience. But another is God's revelation in terms of his written word and in terms of the word, the living word, that is Christ. And we cannot access that by pure reason. But when we're given it, we have to use our reason to study it. I often say we ought to be very humble people. We study a given with a given. God has given us the universe to study as scientists, and he's given us the ability to study it. And the final point in that is this, that the secret, it seems to me, of Paul's spiritual and intellectual authority consists in this. When he stood on the steps of the Antonia fortress in Jerusalem and argued that he had the right to speak to the crowd, he said something which in modern English would go like this: listen, I have the right to speak to these people. I speak Hebrew, and I got my PhD with Gamaliel, who's one of the best scholars in the region. Now, what was he doing there? Was he trusting his credentials? No. I think what he was doing there was with what I tried to do, use his credentials and trust God. And the danger for those of us with a high-powered education is that we do the opposite. We trust our credentials, and then when we make a mess of it, or trust our brains, we use God when we get stuck. So true Christianity is trust God and use our credentials. And it seems to me that's very important. Or our talents, the kind of thing that's demonstrated today. Look at the talents that's behind this table. And the food, it's magnificent. But the people that did this, if you quiz them, they will tell you that they're trusting God and they're using their talents. And that helps me enormously. Does that make sense to you? Probably doesn't answer your question, but it's interesting anyway.
How do you guys see critical theory affecting the academy?
Well, I can say immediately I can't answer the question because I'm not affiliated with the secular academy. I've only taught at Talbot School of Theology or Trinity Evangelical Divinity School or Houston Christian, and even that has been part-time. So I just have no firsthand experience with this.
So the question was, how does critical theory affect teaching in the academy?
It's terrifying, particularly in this country. Yes. And I haven't made a close study of it in North America, but I've met enough professors in secular universities who are really running scared, because the idea of a university where you can discuss and present ideas that are controversial is being stifled by all aspects of that. Starts with political correctness, and it's getting worse and worse. The statement 3 days ago in California, I don't know whether you read it, all professors are going to have to comply with a very prescriptive way of dealing with issues, particularly concerning race, and it's going to put them in an absolute straitjacket. Now, I'm very pleased that the head of my University of Oxford has taken a very strong stand against the students that say we need a safe space. We don't want to have these people. We're going to deplatform them. My view is that if they think like that, they should stay at home with their mummies and daddies and suck their thumbs and change their diapers a bit more often. But it is tragic when this kind of thing becomes normative academic behavior. Now, I see it filtering into the UK institutions, and I suspect, I hope I'm wrong, that within relatively few years, people like me won't be able to exist, because we'll have to sign certain declarations of agreement to ideas, particularly moral and ethical ideas, that redefine fundamental things in society, like the family, like marriage, and all this kind of thing. And we'll not be able to avoid it, and we'll be out. That seems to me to be coming, and you're very right to be concerned about it. And I'm delighted to hear that from a pastor of a church, actually, because it seems to me that one of the things that is hugely important these days, that, if I might say so, Pastor, that pastors of churches, either themselves or using people in their congregations that interact with this kind of thing, prepare young people for an absolute avalanche of undermining the Christian worldview. We are in a battle of worldviews, there's no question about it. And although Bill says, very modestly, that he doesn't work in that context, I want to tell you that the kind of stuff he produces philosophically is an immense help to those who do. So thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Yes. You know, I'm almost scared to answer, which is telling in itself.
That's the answer.
Yeah, that's the answer in itself. I cannot teach like I used to teach. I can't tell jokes. I used to tell jokes and make the class laugh.
Yes.
And now if I tell jokes, I get some notice that a student was offended by this, and they've gone to the dean of students. And I'm just trying to think, what on earth did I say? So I've become far more stoic in my presentations. I think it's affected my teaching. I have so many things that I want to get done in my research and in reflecting who God is in my life, I don't want that to be cut off because of a couple of little statements that I've made. And so I retract from so many things because of that. And so I think it's damaged the university, and it's also damaged the students. You learned to teach a long time ago, and you know, this is my 35th year of being a professor, so I have been teaching a long time. And students just cannot handle what they used to handle. I mean, students didn't walk away and feel offended at every little comment. And now every little thing they're offended, and even things that I thought would encourage them has gotten somebody offended to the point where they go and lodge a complaint. When I think of the things that professors said to me, I'm colorblind, and I was in analytical chemistry, and I asked a professor, can I have the person standing next to me just tell me when the color changes in this titration? I can't tell the color change, and I'll do all the work. He'll just say, color change there, and I know to stop. He said, you have a defect, and you're going to have to learn to live with that defect.
Oh, boy.
And I wasn't offended.
He would have been jailed now.
And what I did is I learned how to do it potentiometrically, meaning electronically. And I used an electrode, and I wrote a program to figure this thing out. And to this day, I use what I learned in that little event to help me in my science, to figure out how to do things. And so these things are challenges to us. And challenge students, and you can't challenge a student anymore because they'll be offended. So that's how it's affected me in my own career. So to me, this is not a philosophical thing. This is real nuts and bolts of what I do.
I had a leading mathematician from a very famous university in my country, and I hadn't met him before, and we were just sitting chatting, and he suddenly burst into tears. International reputation. I said, what's wrong? He said, they've silenced me. I said, who? Who? He said, my colleagues have silenced me. And I daren't mention the name of God or the name of Christ. Now, what you were saying and what you were saying, Jim, is that people are now being taught to play the victim role. We've developed this awful victim culture. And I'm offended, I'm hurt, you've offended me, you've upset me. And there's a real job here, I think, again, pastorally, for people who teach scripture and all the rest of it, to try and shift that. Because it is a very unhealthy thing, not only from a philosophical or psychological perspective, but from a Christian perspective. If anything, the gospel should lift us right out of that. Christ has been the victim to save us from this kind of culture. But you're hitting on a very deep and serious thing, and we need to pray for each other and help each other, because there needs to be, let me put it this way, a forum in churches where hurting people can talk about their experiences of everyday life. I'm very concerned about this. And I've just written a book about it. Now, I don't know you all, so I can speak freely. I'm desperately concerned that many churches in our country have nothing to say about the workplace, the scientist working in the lab, the philosopher working in the academy. They give a message that has a moral dimension and a spiritual dimension. But to the school teacher who's spending 5 days a week teaching kids, she might be encouraged to teach a Sunday school class, but nobody talks to her about all the problems in the workspace. And that's why I wrote a book about work just a few months ago, to try and get people to think that God is interested in our work 24/7. And Scripture says, all that you do, not all the Christian things you do, all that you do unto the Lord. And that's exciting. I know Jim's passionate about what happens to chemistry when you do it for the Lord.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It is so much fun. I go to my office and I love doing my work, and I feel that Jesus is just blessing my work, and he blesses me, and it's exciting to walk with the Lord. I can't imagine going to my office and not knowing that God is for me and doing these things. So yeah, I love it, and this is why I go to work to have fun.
I started by thanking you all for what you do.
Good man.
We have watched so many of your videos all the way from South Africa to here. It's been influential in our lives and in families' lives. So thank you to both of you. and this is not a personal question, we've watched so many debates, and I've literally stood up and switched off the TV because I got so upset with the people who are debating. How can I not understand? You hear the same questions over and over. You treat each person with respect every single time. Answer their questions so calm. How do you do it? And how do you just keep so calm?
Who are you looking at?
He's not looking at me, I'll tell you that.
He's not looking at Jim, are you? You've been this far on the table.
How do you remain calm in a debate situation when the opponent is insulting and derogatory and vile in his behavior? And I think there are a couple of things that have helped me. One is that Jesus says that rejoice and be glad when men revile you and persecute you and say all manner of things falsely about you for my name's sake. Rejoice and be glad because your reward is great in heaven. And so when I hear this sort of opprobrium and insult from the other side, I think in my mind, thank you for putting another reward for me in heaven. He's just given me a great gift. And that helps you, I think, to turn the other cheek and not get upset with it. But then as well, I have to say part of my debate training in high school and college was to have a poker face during debate. You are not to react in any way to what the opponent says. You are to remain calm and not get upset. And so that training has served me well in dealing with audiences and opponents that can often stoop to these sorts of personal attacks.
Most people are intelligent enough to see when an opponent who behaves like that is losing the plot. Mm-hmm. And I feel it's hugely important. My motivation is I'm going to do my best in this hostile situation to befriend the person. Not simply answer the questions, but befriend them, show them some kind of friendship. And it's not easy with Richard Dawkins and some of the others. But the point is that that attitude that Bill has described, that often leads to conversion. I did my debate with Dawkins, the big one in Alabama, 14 years ago, something like that. I still hear from people who got converted watching it. And when they tell me what it wasn't altogether what I said. It was the fact that you treated him with respect, even though his arguments were so vicious, that people see. And I really do believe that if we don't like the heat, we need to stay out of the kitchen. That's the first thing. But secondly, the world watches attitude just as much as it watches content. And that's hugely important. I'll tell you a story of one debate I did in Australia. And I went on a TV program that's watched by a massive percentage of the Australian population. It's called the IQ2 or something. And I was warned, first of all, that I was one of the only Christians that had ever been invited on it. And I was told in no uncertain terms and sent a video to indicate that they would tear me to pieces. And I thought, well, this is a delightful invitation. And I went on, I was terrified, you see. And we met in a green room beforehand. And there was, I think she was a sociologist. She wouldn't shake hands with me. Made it absolutely clear she would have nothing to do with me. So the debate starts, there are 5 or 6 on it. And unfortunately, one of the participants was a comedian who was absolutely pathetic. And the moderator allowed him far too much rope. But anyway, this lady didn't look at me. And of course, we only got a little saying something. So she suddenly said something. And it came to me. And I said, I think we need to listen to this lady very carefully. Because actually what she's saying is extremely important. And she just turned completely, visibly on TV. I had a phone call from a leading Australian evangelical who said, I've never seen that happen on TV before. She just lit up and she said the following. She said, And of course there's Richard Dawkins, isn't there? And he talks absolute rubbish because, and she was an atheist. She said because he doesn't see that what he believes is a belief system. And she was as friendly with me afterwards as she could possibly have been. And that is what happens. I did another debate with a very leading expert on euthanasia in this country who had to turn off the switch on her husband. You probably know her, in Utah. She writes a leading book, and 2 months before our debate, she had gone against all her principles for assisted dying to turn off the switch for her husband who'd been injured in a cycle accident. And I was told this, and I said, does she still want to debate? And the answer came back, yes. And I said, well, look, I will only debate if I can have a meal with her beforehand. So I went and I sat with her and I said, look, I know what's been happening to you. Do you really want to go through with this? Because it was a debate on suffering. And she says, I do. Well, I said, look, everybody in the room is going to know your story. Would you mind if I mention it? She said, would you? Now, she's an atheist. Would you? I said, I'd be honored to, but are you really sure? So at the beginning, I stood up. I asked to make an extra statement. I stood up and I said, now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to listen to this lady very carefully because she's been through a horrific experience of life. And what she says will be deeply affected by it, and I want you to show respect, no criticism, listen to the argument. Afterwards, she came up and she threw her arms around me in public. Oh. And she called the photographer over and she said, will you please take a photograph? She said, I want my department to see this because they are not going to believe it. That's what I feel can be achieved by attitude, and the Lord helps you to do it. And I had some wonderful times in South Africa as well.
Interesting
If you do
talk.
not believe in the physical resurrection of Jesus
This is
Christ,
James Torr.
send me an email and give me a chance to tell you by Zoom why I believe in the physical resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Good man.
Right, and this is what you said is attitude-based, maybe evidence-based. What kind of evidence you think is worth to take into account based on our faith on? We met with Pastor Ben recently. Here's in our neighborhood a guy who has a nice house, and he's been on 2 tours to Mountain Ararat to find Noah's Ark in 83 and 89, I believe. Is it some kind of, if you did found that this, would it some helpful or not, or what kind of evidence? Yeah.
Yes, the question is, what do we mean by saying that evidence-based faith is what is taught in Scripture? I go directly to the central statement about it, and it's John's statement of purpose for his gospel. Many other signs, semi-on, Jesus did in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written in order that you might believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that believing you might have life in his name. In other words, here is the evidence that becomes the basis for your trust, for your faith. That's what I mean by evidence-based faith. And now comes one of our famous philosophers. I don't know whether you know this. I expect you do, Bill. It was very funny. A.C. Grayling is a British philosopher, and he was invited very foolishly to write a column for The New Scientist. And his very first article was, Jesus expects you to believe without evidence. Did you see this article?
No,
it's wonderful.
He would say that.
Oh, well, honestly.
I debated A.C. Grayling at the Oxford Union.
And you wiped him out.
Oh.
Well, anyway, I read this. So what is his evidence that Jesus expects us to believe without evidence? And he went to the statement, the story of Thomas in John. And
that's the worst
I know,
one to go to.
it's the worst. So he says, look, Jesus says Blessed are those that have not seen and yet believe. Now, there he says, Jesus expects you to believe without evidence. I want to say to A.C. Grayling, can you not read? Jesus doesn't say, blessed are they that believe without evidence. Blessed are they that have not seen. And seeing something is only one kind of evidence. There are endless other kinds of evidence. A blind person can come to faith in Christ on the basis of all kinds of evidence without having seen. Now, that was staggering. What is so staggering about it is those are the verses immediately preceding the statement of evidence that I gave earlier. So that's what I mean. And it's important, I think, first of all, to ask what Scripture means by evidence. And that's why Jim here, and you can speak to this, Jim, and I'd like you to, is so concentrates on the evidence for the resurrection, why I personally believe in the physical resurrection of Jesus. Things like Noah's Ark would be interesting if you could establish it accurately. But there are all kinds of difficulties with that kind of thing. But that's not to say you cannot find things in archaeology that don't establish Scripture. There's loads of evidence from archaeology, and it's important. But a lot of effort has been spent on Noah's Ark, and maybe it might have been better spent on other things. Philosophy, for example. But Jim, do you want to comment on the evidence for the resurrection and how you see it's got such power?
Yeah, it has enormous power. I talk, whenever I witness to people, I talk about the resurrection. I talk about Thomas sticking his hand into the side of Jesus. I talk about the blood and the water coming out, how Jesus had been dead for some time. I talk about how his appearances is appearing to over 500 people at one time, and Paul's saying, go and ask the people. Most of them are alive to this day. And how he invited his disciples to come and touch me, see I have flesh and bones, when they thought they were just seeing a ghost. How he ate with them, how he met with them in Jerusalem, in Emmaus, in the road between Jerusalem and Emmaus. He met with them up in the Galilee. He met with them indoors, outdoors. He met with them on the seashore. He had a picnic with them on the seashore. He cooked a meal for them on the seashore. And so over and over again, he ate in front of them, and he counseled them over a period of 40 days. And then I talk about the writings of Tacitus, of Pliny the Younger, of Trajan. There's all of these piles of evidence, but still, in this short conversation that I have with people where we talk about the evidence for the resurrection for about 20 minutes, I see so many people get saved, so many people accept it and pray this prayer of inviting the Lord into their life and repenting. And I'm still amazed at this. In 20 minutes of a conversation, they go from not believing in the physical resurrection to believing in the physical resurrection in 20 minutes of talking about the resurrection. How do you take an educated man or woman and get them to believe in something as amazing as a resurrection in 20 minutes? And the only way I can explain this is it must have already been written on their heart. It was already there. I couldn't convince you of Santa Claus in 20 minutes. I couldn't. How do you do this?
It's real.
It's because God has done something on the heart. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is so fundamental to our faith. Paul says that we must believe it in our heart in order to be saved. If that's the case, God must have made it accessible to us. It's not inaccessible. It's really quite accessible. And the other thing is I get this thing where people think that, oh, well, I don't have 100% assurance. I tell them, I don't have 100% assurance of anything in life. Nothing. For all I know, this is all a computer simulation. None of us are here. We're just electrons and transistors, and none of us are here. I don't have 100% on anything. But the man cried out when he said, Jesus, heal my son if you can. And Jesus said, if you can, all things are possible to him who believes. And the man said, I believe, but help my unbelief, meaning that I'm not 100% there. And Jesus did not say, well, when you're 100%, you come back and bring your son and I'll heal him. Jesus immediately healed his son. He said, that's good enough. As long as you've got some faith, that's good enough. I'm not asking you for 100%. And as soon as I tell that to people, I see them all of a sudden, oh, I'm ready to pray. I can do this now. I can do this because we're not required 100% on anything. We never have 100% on anything. And as soon as they believe that and they take it, and then as soon as they pray, their face lights up. It lights up. And all of a sudden, they're believing more than they did a moment ago. This is the amazing thing about it, because the gospel is not a sham. The gospel is true. So that means that the God of heaven and earth intercedes upon human life, and he touches them in that moment. And he writes things on people's hearts that cause them to be interested. And then they grow in this, because Jesus said in John chapter 7, verse 17, he says, if anyone is willing to do my will, he will know of my teaching, whether it is of God or whether I speak from myself. In other words, as we do his will, then we understand more and more that this teaching is of God. When you first get saved, you don't embrace all the Bible. I mean, all these crazy stories. But once you've been in the Word of God and you've seen over and over again this Word come true, your faith in this understanding, your belief and your acceptance of this grows. And this is why Jesus said, if anyone does my will, he'll know of the teaching. And as we obey Jesus, we grow in this. It's a growth experience. And so the resurrection is so fundamental. And this is something we really, really hold on to, because this is the one thing that it says that we must do in order to be saved. It's not the virgin birth. It's not Noah and his ark. It is the resurrection. So that's special. That's something that's been written upon our hearts.
This question is for you, Dr. Craig. Okay. I am a grad student in a philosophy program at a secular university. And I'm wondering, what I've been looking for is a mentor. And I'm wondering if you have any recommendations, or where a Christian in a secular philosophy program might go to find a mentor, because I run into problems like all of my professors, in fact, all of the faculty in the whole department are atheists. And frequently they don't understand my arguments.
Gee.
Because I'm coming at it from a Christian worldview. And so I, as the student, I oftentimes find myself at a loss, because I'll present an argument and they'll say, no, that's wrong. And I'll say, can you explain to me how it's wrong? And on more than one occasion, it'll just end at some sort of an impasse. And then I, as a student, I don't have anywhere to go with that.
She is a PhD student in philosophy and finds it difficult as a Christian in a secular university to have a mentor that she can discuss these issues with, and that can help to guide her in her career path, I assume. And
to formulate arguments also,
yeah.
My secular professors won't just say, no, that's wrong, period.
Well, if you're willing to go to a different university, there are women in philosophy like Eleanor Stump at St. Louis University that you could study under. And
she's in her phased retirement now.
She's going to retire?
She's in phased retirement now.
Oh, really? I was just at St. Louis a month ago, and she seemed to be very active. I wasn't aware she was stepping down.
Yeah, just phased.
Okay, well, thank you. Women in philosophy are as scarce as hen's teeth. There are not too many, and Christian women in philosophy are even rarer, unfortunately. So, if I were you, I think what I would do would be to get involved in a Christian philosophical professional society, like the Evangelical Philosophical Society. And I would begin to attend the annual meeting. It's held every November in conjunction with the Evangelical Theological Society. So you can have a chance to network both with evangelical theologians and biblical scholars, as well as with other Christian philosophers. And this is a tremendous encouragement. It will give you a fellowship and a network that you're not part of at the secular university. And so I think that would be the best thing that I would advise you to do. The meeting of the EPS this year is in San Antonio in mid-November. I would attend if I were you and start to meet these people, attend their papers, ask questions. These philosophers are amazingly accessible at these professional societies. They are eager to meet with you if you're willing to make an appointment with them. So I would really, really encourage you to do this. I think given that you're so isolated in your program now, you've got to be part of this broader network that can help to give you fellowship, networking, and mentoring.
To be mentioned, or some of us as we've asked questions have mentioned we've watched you online, we've seen this on YouTube or this video, that. Dr. Lakes, you mentioned being on a television program and the like. What about the power of media? How have you seen God use media through your ministry with your message? And then what encouragement might you give to those coming in who are going to backfill in the places that when God has called you home and his kingdom is still going out, the witness is still going out? What about this younger generation and they're using media to propel the message as well?
So the question is the use of the social media in the defense and proclamation of the gospel, and how can the next generation take advantage of that? This came as quite a surprise to me. I've been speaking for years on university campuses in Europe and North America, and I was frustrated because I felt like what I was doing was just being done in a corner and wasn't really having much of a cultural impact. And then what we discovered was that people were making pirated videos of these debates and presentation and putting them up on YouTube. And we had no idea that they were doing this. There was this one fellow that founded a channel called Dr. Craig Videos. And this came as a shock to us. And what we saw was that where maybe a few score, maybe a few hundred might come and hear me give a talk, or at a debate, you can get thousands in person at a live audience. Online, hundreds of thousands will watch these videos. My video with Christopher Hitchens at Biola University has been seen by over 1 million people. And so it became clear to us that through these social media, we could reach far, far more people with the gospel than I could ever hope to do in my personal circumference of contacts. And so we began to exploit the social media as much as we could. So Reasonable Faith has not only, that's the organization that I work with, it has not only a website where all of my published articles and question of the week and other things are placed, but we also have 3 YouTube channels. We have a podcast that goes out every week. We have TikTok. We've got Instagram, the new Equip project. We have a series of animated videos on arguments for the existence of God and evidence for Jesus that are brilliant. They're done by an animator that used to work for the Billy Graham Association, and he came over to Reasonable Faith because he believes so much in the kind of ministry and work that we're doing. And as a result, we now have in excess of 3.5 million engagements every month across our Reasonable Faith social media platforms. These are not just clicks. To be an engagement, there has to be something done, like read an article, watch a video, like something, a Facebook post or something of that sort. Over 3.5 million now every month are accessing this Reasonable Faith material all around the world. And it's so thrilling to hear about people in Nepal and Iran, closed countries to the gospel, that get this material via the internet. The internet is absolutely subversive in terms of getting material out through the gospel. And so that would be my encouragement to budding Christian philosophers, theologians, or apologists, is to exploit all of these social media to the full extent that you can, because I think that you will reach far, far more people through those media than you will personally.
I've found it tremendously threatening to my colleagues of how quickly I can get many, many people to see my views and my points on things when they can't get beyond 2 or 3 people. And it's threatening to the university when they see how many people I can engage with. And there was an instance that happened last year where the campus newspaper wrote some things about me, And I said, okay, what I'm going to do is you're going to write another article. I'm going to make a YouTube video about you writers of the article and the editor of the newspaper. And they didn't write the article, and they begged me not to do it. They begged me not to do it. They said, please do not make that video and post it. And I said, okay, I won't. And all of a sudden they realized that I was able to access far more people than the school newspaper, which is read by about 6 people. and this is where I gave a talk last year, on Origin of Life, when Zach invited me to give this talk, and there was a firestorm that broke out because Rice put it on their social media site, on their Instagram site, thinking that, oh, this professor's going to do it. It was a new person at Rice, and so they advertised it. And there was apparently a firestorm broke out. I went to the event, and people were apologizing to me for all the things that people had said about me, and I'm like, didn't bother me a bit. I didn't even know it. I mean, and this is where I first met Paul, and Paul was challenged by that. And then Paul contacted me, 6 months later, and I shared with Paul, and this is why he's here. I mean, and so Paul came to a knowledge of the truth through this. And so many people, so that video that people were mocking and saying, oh, Tour's a flat earther, and that has had over 250,000 views in a year. And, I'm not like John Lennox or William Lane Craig. I'm just a chemist. But there was all of this views, so I think it's a tremendously powerful thing, and I'm going to exploit it to the fullest. Charles Spurgeon said, we have an impressionable generation, so we must impress ourselves upon them.
The average readership of a mathematical paper is 1.5. That is the mother of the mathematician. And so use of media is hugely important. I often say technology is like a sharp knife. You can use a sharp knife to do surgery, you can use it for murder. And we're in a world where the internet is being used for murder of all kinds, destroying people's lives, and therefore not to have a significant Christian presence is a huge mistake. And I think it's so encouraging to hear the way in which Bill has leveraged his contacts. I got into this a bit late, but I was staggered. I did a debate in the Oxford Union with a number of atheists, and it's a clip for about 15 minutes. And somebody said the other day, have you seen about your clip? And I said, no. And they said, well, it's had 3 million views. Oh. Now, that is just amazing. How did I live at a time when it would be possible to do that? And Bill reaching millions of people every month. I mean, it is tragic. And I really believe it's an Esther moment for such a time as this, that God is raising up people. But young people often are very savvy as to how to use the internet. I work with an organization in Oxford called OCA, the Oxford Centre for Christian Apologetics. And we have a number of young people in their early 30s who are very articulate. And the way in which they, as streetwise young people, understanding the technology, can communicate the gospel, I just say, go for it. I couldn't do it like that. So we need to be looking out for talent and somehow helping them and schooling them. The big problem I have is the reinvention of the wheel. I think there's a downside in all of this. I get invited to hundreds of interviews every month, and TV crews turn up at my house all the time, and they're all after exactly the same thing. We want you to talk on artificial intelligence. And I say, well, on my website. Oh, but we want it on our website. And you can waste an enormous amount of time. And it's very difficult, actually, to say no. To say, look, I've actually done this. You can use it freely. Oh, but we want it on our website. And I just fear sometimes with my sinful mind that there's an ulterior motive there that's not exactly pure Christian. So there is a problem, but granted that that exists, I do feel it is quite amazing. I was speaking the other day, you mentioned hundreds of thousands, Bill. I spoke to 100,000 people in Mexico and Venezuela simultaneously. Well, I mean, and the people that organized that were all in their early 20s. It is staggering. So it's hugely important, and I would encourage young people who are gifted in this direction to encourage it, and church pastors and so on to look out in their congregations for people with that kind of capacity.
You alluded to the gulf that can open up between biblical scholarship and the philosophers oftentimes. Do you have hope that the resurgence of analytical theology will help this gulf? And if that's the case, do you encourage like young Christian scholars to be pursuing that nexus?
All right, the question was, do I think that the rise of so-called analytic theology is helpful in bridging the gap between biblical theology and philosophy? Now, to understand the question, you have to know what analytic theology is. This is a very young movement within theology where theologians have finally waked up to the realization that the people who are doing the really good work in systematic theology tend to be philosophers. People like Richard Swinburne and Alvin Plantinga, Robert Adams and William Alston and so on and so forth. And the work of these philosophers is proving impossible to ignore. And this has birthed now within theology this movement called analytic theology, where theologians are adopting the methods of analytic philosophy in doing theological work. And I think it is extremely fruitful. One of the benefits of analytic philosophy is the emphasis upon clear definitions and identification of your logical train of thought and clear statement of premises and conceptual clarification. And these kinds of analytical tools are so valuable for doing theology. And so I have found in my theological work and in biblical theology, analytic philosophy to be tremendously valuable. To just give one illustration, I'm working now on Doctrine of Man, and it is conventional wisdom among biblical theologians that the biblical view of man is that man does not have a soul. There is no such thing as the soul.
Wait,
rather,
what?
we are just material, physical organisms, biological organisms. And the claim is this is the view the Bible teaches, that the ancient Hebrew conception of human beings is that of a physical organism. There is no immaterial part of man called a soul. This is astonishing when you think of all the dualistic language that's used in Scripture for spirit and flesh, body and soul, and the state of the dead in disembodied existence. And John Cooper, who is a philosophical theologian or analytic theologian, has so helpfully distinguished between what he calls functional holism and ontological holism. Biblical theologians, in saying that the biblical view of man is holistic, have conflated functional holism with ontological holism. That is to say, they've inferred that because man functions as a psychosomatic unity, a harmoniously functioning unity, that therefore that implies an ontological holism that is purely materialism. He is nothing more than a physical organism. And once you make the distinction between functional holism and ontological holism, and ask what is the evidence biblically that goes beyond functional holism, that we function as psychosomatic, harmoniously functioning units, to ontological holism, that there is no soul, it's almost impossible to make the case. It's a clear confusion and failure on the part of biblical theologians to analyze correctly the idea of holism and what it entails. Now, that's just one example of where someone with some ability in conceptual analysis can draw these kinds of distinctions that then can illuminate the biblical text. And I have found this over and over again, frankly, is that the biblical text can be illuminated through careful conceptual analysis. And so the answer, I think, is yes. The work of these analytic theologians is to be encouraged. It is wonderful that they are exploiting and utilizing the insights of analytic philosophy in doing their work. And let me say just one more thing. They are rectifying, I think, a deep deficit in Christian philosophy. One of my gripes about my fellow Christian philosophers is how biblically illiterate many of them are. They tend to just ignore what the Bible says in doing their philosophical work. So, for example, one of my colleagues denies that God has foreknowledge of future contingents, of future free acts. And I said to him, how can you as a Christian deny that God has foreknowledge? The Bible, the New Testament has a family of words for foreknowledge. Prognosis, foreknowledge. Prognosko, to foreknow. Pramartureo, to tell in advance. It's right there explicitly in the biblical text. And this fellow laughed and he said to me, Bill, you know Christian philosophers don't care what the Bible says. And we had a good chuckle, but it's sad that there's too much truth in that. They don't know the biblical languages. Few of them have gone to seminary, had theological training. And so this is where those who have had some theological training, who are doing theology, can not only profit from Christian philosophy, but they can help it by bringing their expertise in biblical studies and biblical languages to the work of these Christian philosophers in handling questions like divine foreknowledge, divine eternity, the nature of the atonement, which is just bristling with philosophical issues of importance. This needs to be a real marriage of disciplines where good systematic theology draws upon biblical theology, philosophical theology, and then there's actually a third component, historical theology. We stand on the shoulders of giants and we need to appropriate their insights. So in the work that I'm doing, I'm trying to wed these three disciplines together, biblical theology, philosophical theology, and historical theology, to do a respectable job of theology. So the answer is an enthusiastic yes to the work of analytic theologians.
Okay, that is a great place to begin to wrap up. Because, you know, Bill, I've told you, this is what when I hear philosophy speak, we were talking how scientists are philosophically illiterate. You're looking at one. And because we didn't learn any philosophy in any of my classes in graduate school or in undergraduate. I did take one philosophy class, but I wasn't sure I was following it. The interest wasn't there. So I'm a product of that. And it is so hard for me to follow you. And then I was really excited when you said to me one day that you had a lot of trouble understanding one of the articles that I had written on Origin of Life, and I was so happy that I could get you back. We're going to begin to wrap this thing up. I want to thank you all for coming, and we are really indebted to these. We were just talking. You were just talking about standing on the shoulder of giants, and these men have been giants in our lives, and they've helped us so much in understanding things and in defending the faith. When you think of going against people like Mr. Hitchens and these sorts of people that are very hard to deal with. Thank you for all of this. And are you bringing this?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
Happy birthday to Dr. Kelly.
Okay.
He will be 80 years old, 80 years young. Very soon.
So in 2 weeks he's going to be 80 years old. Yes. He wants to get a picture of this, and you're going to put this in front of... Okay.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay. And let me turn this way so the people down there can see that candle. At least some of the people will be able to see it. Okay. Start singing. Who can sing?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lennox. Happy birthday to you.
You have to make a wish and blow. Oh, God, the wind did it for you.
No, he did that mentally.
Mentally. Oh, wow, that's his power.
It was,
okay, and you have to cut the cake.
It was blown away by the power of philosophy.
Or my hot air.
Thank you so very much. I only have an 80th birthday once. And thank you for being so thoughtful. This is a wonderful cake, and somebody has shown a great deal of creativity. I believe in God stands in this. And when I was married 55 years ago to Sally, the text that was used by the man who preached, he was an ex-heavyweight boxer who was illiterate when he was converted at the age of 19 and had to go to a primary school to learn to read, became the only man I've ever met who could summarize every chapter in the Bible from memory. And when he preached this sermon, he took as his text the very first words of Scripture, "In the beginning, God." And he said, "Sally, John, it's a new beginning today. In the beginning, God. You will come to other new beginnings. Perhaps you'll have children. In the beginning, God. You may get a job, hopefully, which wasn't always certain for an academic. In the beginning, God." And I never forgot it. What he didn't realize, of course, that in later life, I would be encouraged to defend that faith, that there was a beginning, and that God was in at it and he created the world. So it's just lovely to have you so thoughtfully encourage me on this birthday. I don't normally do anything for birthdays, and my German friends love birthdays, and I was once in Germany on a birthday and I was nearly sent home. They said, "You cannot be outside your family on a birthday." But I was, but I will be home for my birthday. So thank you so very much, and God bless you all.
If you're enjoying this series, give us a thumbs up and click the subscribe button, and that way you'll hear when we're coming out with new videos. There are no salaried employees in this organization. All the accounting, all the legal work, that's all done by friends of mine. The only thing that I have to pay for is the production work, and if you could help us out with that, I'd appreciate it. There's a link below where you can just click on that and help us in several different ways. Thank you.
Interesting talk, huh? Yeah, that was interesting. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it made you think a little bit deeper. Especially the first part of this video with Trey Smith. Oh boy, he was going deep. He was going deep, and he had a beef with the academics. Let's just put it that way. Well, what I'm doing here now is I'm trying to beat Carthage. That's attacking me from this southwestern flank. What? No. Okay. I've silenced the Romans. I've silenced the Egyptians. Now Carthage is emboldened. I think I'm doing pretty good. I think I'm doing pretty good. And let's go to Nimrod. This is an hour. I'd rather not. I'd rather call it a night, and maybe we'll do it either. Well, it has to be tomorrow. So, I hope you liked it. I hope you like the subjects that are being discussed. It's probably the most important subject that you need to think about in your life at certain one point. Why not do it now? So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. See ya.